So let's start with, we have a quorum here and I'm just going to read this brief notice that we're holding today a meeting of the Barnstable County Board of Regional Commissioners. It's going to be conducted in accordance with applicable laws. When public participation is required by law or allowed by the board chairpersons wishing to participate may do so by accessing the meeting link on the posted meeting agenda on our website at capecod.gov. Members of the public may view the meeting via live broadcast at our Barnstable County YouTube channel and on our website. So we do have a quorum, and I'm calling this meeting of the commissioners to order. And I'm going to turn it over now to our wonderful hosts, the town of Bourne, and Chair Melissa Ferretti. Thank you.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, thank you. We appreciate you being here and sharing your meeting with us today. I'm new as chair for this, so I'm not sure how we start this project and how we do the Pledge of Allegiance, I would imagine. Yes. And our
Very good.
silence for our safety officials.
Very good. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Welcome. I think we'll give you the floor.
Thank you. So the next item would be to, on our agenda is for a brief moment of silence. Please join us in a moment of silence to reflect on the bravery and the sacrifices of all those who have put their lives on the line in service to our country. Thank you. I'd like to take an item out of order, and I'd like to just for a moment do introductions so that you get a chance to meet our staff and our team that's here. So I'm going to start in the audience. If you are part of the county staff, could you raise your hand and announce yourself, starting in the back? Ian?
Ian Roberts, I'm just county IT.
Good.
Mike McGuire, Director of the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension.
Carrie Purcell with the Cooperative Extension as well. I'm solid waste and recycling, and I'm also part of Mass DEP.
Fisher Cattle, also part of Cape Cod Cooperative Extension as extension entomologist and horticulturalist.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Wayne to announce himself.
Wayne Sampson, Barnstable County.
That's great. And up here at the dais, we have
Michael Dutton, County Administrator.
Robin Young, Executive Assistant to the Commissioner, Administrator.
Ron Bergstrom, County Commissioner.
Mark Forrest, County Commissioner.
And Sheila Lyons, County Commissioner.
And then I'm going to turn it over to Warren, if you'd like to introduce and acknowledge your team.
Marie Stranian, Select Board Vice Chair.
Melissa Ferretti, Select Board Vice Chair, Chairwoman Herring Pond Wampanoag Tribe.
Mary Jane Mastrangelo, Select Board.
Peter Meyer, longest serving of the 5 select board members.
And there's somebody on.
Jean, Jean is joining us. My apologies. Jean Azervis is joining us online. Jean.
Gets her hand up, yeah.
Good morning. Yes, Gina Zarovitz, select board member.
That's great. Welcome, James.
Most recent member of the select board.
That's great.
Good.
And Melissa, are there any people in terms of town department?
I think Marlene, maybe we could have Marlene do a quick intro.
Betsy McCollum, Town Administrator.
And then Barry, I see Barry's here. You could do a quick intro, Barry.
Barry Johnson, Town Clerk.
All right, I think that's our
And you have the assistant town.
town clerk. Oh, sorry, I saw you beside her. We have not met, so my apologies.
Elizabeth Valdez-Gazero, the Assistant.
Very good to meet you. Thank you.
Very good. Well, we're excited to be here in the town of Bourne. The county commissioners have been making the rounds. We call it our road show, where we've been meeting with town officials and select boards from around the Cape since the beginning of the year. And we have found it incredibly helpful to have a dialogue with our municipal officials and town officials to talk about the services that we provide in your community, the things that we're doing in your community, and quite frankly, particularly with select boards, have an opportunity to have a direct engagement and dialogue on some of the work that we're doing. And if there are things that we can do better, in some communities, there are things that select board members have brought up that they would like to see us do. And we also get a lot of very good feedback also from the town administrator. Michael Dutton, our county administrator, meets on a monthly basis with the administrators for their association meeting. So We do our best to keep our administrators up to speed, but we have found that in these discussions, we've had tremendously positive and helpful feedback in terms of the things that we're working on and perhaps some of the things that we might want to work on and expand on in the future. For example, in a couple of towns, we have been asked to expand the work of our purchasing and our procurement operations into going into other areas, other services that we don't particularly solicit bids on. That's been helpful. So the suggestions are as small as that, and then in some cases they're much bigger, dealing with major infrastructure issues and so forth. So I have found that these discussions have been incredibly productive, mutually productive, and we very much appreciate having the opportunity to be here in Bourne and to meet with all of you folks. So the next item on our agenda is to invite public comment. I think you probably do that as well as a board, right? And so I'm going to just open it up. If there's anybody here that has a public comment, either for the county commissioners or the Bourne Select Board, by all means, make yourself known. Do we have anybody on our teams?
I
Or
do not see any
I don't see
hands.
anything else either.
okay, so far so good. All right, moving on to the next item in our agenda. This is authorizing the execution of a citation to Barry Johnson in recognition of his service to the town of Bourne and to Barnstable County. And so I'm going to ask for Commissioner Bergstrom to read the citation.
Excuse me. Okay, this is citation from the Barnstable County Board of Regional Commissioners to Barry Johnson. Be it known that the Barnstable County Board of Regional Commissioners offers its sincerest gratitude to Barry Johnson for over 50 years of public service to the residents of Bourne and of Barnstable County, whereas Mr. Johnson began his career in municipal service as an elected member of the Bourne Select Board, serving from 1972 to 1984, during which time he was appointed to represent Bourne on the Cape Cod Planning and Economic Development Commission, the regional precursor agency to today's Cape Cod Commission, and the Barnstable County Finance Advisory Board, a body established by the Massachusetts legislature in 1973 to provide Cape Cod's 15 towns with statutory oversight of county expenditures. And whereas upon the adoption of the Barnstable County Home Rule Charter, authorized by Chapter 163 of the Acts of 1988 and ratified by the voters of Barnstable County in November of 1988, Mr. Johnson assumed the role of Barnstable County Administrator of the Cape Cod Regional Government under the policy direction of the Board of Regional Commissioners and overseeing the day-to-day operations, fiscal management, and regional service delivery of county agencies through the late 1980s and into the 1990s. And whereas Mr. Johnson has served as an elected town clerk of Bourne since 2003, and in that capacity also was appointed as the town's, keeper of the records, and oversaw elections administration and maintained vital statistics, which, while concurrently serving as chairman of the Community Preservation Committee, evaluating local historical preservation, open space, and affordable housing initiatives, and serves on the Open Space Committee, and serves as general manager of the Bourne Recreational Authority, a self-funded independent authority that operates the John Gallo Ice Arena and the Bourne Scenic Park Camping Ground, in which role he has represented the authority in ongoing discussions with the Massachusetts Department of Transportation regarding the impacts of the proposed new Bourne Bridge upon Bourne Scenic Park. And now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Regional Commissioners of Barnstable County, Cape Cod Regional Government does hereby extend its formal recognition and sincere gratitude to Barry H. Johnson for his exceptional and enduring contributions to the governance of the town of Bourne and the Cape Cod region as a whole, and does commend him to his fellow residents and colleagues as a singular example of dedicated, principled, and multifaceted public service. And it's signed by three of us, Mark Forrest, Chair, myself, Vice Chair, and Sheila Lyons. So
Thank you. Well, good. I'm going to ask Commissioner Lance to make a motion to formally approve the citation.
Mr. Chair, I move to authorize the execution of a citation to Barry Johnson in recognition of his service to the town of Bourne and to Barnstable County.
Motion and a second. In terms of discussion, I'd just like to offer my own personal thanks to Barry. I started in Cape Cod in 1981 in the town manager's office in Provincetown, representing the select board in Provincetown as assistant town manager. But I served on a host of county committees, and Barry was my mentor. Barry was the go-to person for me as a young administrator trying to understand the ways of Cape Cod and understand municipal government. Barry was part of that generation of select board members that they were working the job 24/7 in a multitude of capacities. And but Barry was the one person that understood county government probably better than anybody on the county scene. When he chaired the County Finance Advisory Board, he had a tremendous grasp of the county's operations. Now, back then, you need to understand, the county had a hospital.
Mhm.
We also had oversight of the sheriff's department and a host of other things, which I won't go into detail on. But Barry had a really firm grasp of county's operations and helped us weather some really challenging financial times. In fact, Barry was so good at it that we had, it was basically Barry's budgets that ultimately got adopted by the commissioners and approved to run the county. So I call Barry sometimes Mr. County. He's Mr. Bourne. He's been basically our go-to guy for so many things. And I think we as a board, as we reflect on how far we've come in terms of providing county services, we thought it was appropriate as a board when we came to Bourne to let Barry know personally and to let his fellow town officials know how much Barry's service has been appreciated by us all. So Barry, really, thank you so much for everything that you have done for us.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to allow my fellow commissioners if they have anything else to add. But, and I know Barry, I promised Barry that he would have a chance to get to the podium and to have a rebuttal.
Yes, and dispute anything we said.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I really became aware of Barry. I attended the Cape Cod Conservation Compact, where they honored you in the last year. And Rob O'Leary was there telling a very humorous story about wanting to be commissioner. And I really got to appreciate all of the contributions you did and have done for Barnstable County and the region. I mean, it really starts here, but you really thought of all of the Cape. And I came back, I was so impressed. I was talking to Mark and he said, oh, Barry, and we have met, but I did not know everything. And so I was very impressed. And I do think we need to have a sit down with you and go over history of the beginning, because there's all these myths, there's a lot of myths out there. Then you might be able to set that record straight. So I am committing that we get you in and have a series of conversations quietly so that we can present something this year. It would be great. But thank you for everything you've done. I'm very, very grateful.
Commissioner Bergstrom, do you want to?
Yeah, people oftentimes ask me, too often actually, well, what does Barnstable County do? What's it all about? Of course, I could go back to 1685, but generally I don't go back that far. I try to give it in the reference of most of us who are still here. And I go back to 1988 and 1989 when we created the system that we have now, which, Barry Johnson was so important. He stepped forward because that was the initial beginning of what now is Barnstable County, which is strongest county, one of the remaining counties in Massachusetts, but also the strongest county in Massachusetts that does so much for so many people, with the Cape Cod Commission and the county and of the other organizations that we oversee. So we owe a debt to the found, just like in 250th anniversary, we owe a debt to, Washington and all those people. We owe a debt to the people who sent us on this path. now 37 years ago. And here we are now, so it's really appreciated.
Very much. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Melissa, I'm going to turn it over to you before Barry, we hear Barry's rebuttal. I'm going to ask if there's anything that you would like to offer or your colleagues.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to start very quickly. You know, I came into this sort of, you're not your typical politician. Y'all know that. And I can say that from the beginning of my tenure, when I first got into office, I looked to Barry, and Barry was always one of the people who supported me, fully knowing that, you know, I might be judged because I was not really a municipal leader in the past. But Barry, just so you know, he encouraged me from the day I got elected and allowed me to feel capable to do this job, and that I was equal with everyone else on this board, regardless of my experience in municipal leadership. Being just taught me to be good intentions often trump our experience. And Barry really let me be that person. So I want to share that with you, Barry. You may not know that. So thank you for the acceptance and the understanding that we don't have to be hundreds of years in municipal leadership to do a good job, do the right thing, and make decisions that support the town without an agenda in any other way. So thank you. I'd like to give the select board an opportunity as well, Vice Chair Sarunian, to go.
Thank you. Thank you, Barry. Barry and I go way back to when I was my first elected official as the library trustee. And we needed a lot of guidance then because we were shooting for building a new library. And so Barry and I along the way have had a lot of heart-to-hearts. He's helped me through my career as an elected official, encouraged me to run school committee, and I did that for several years. And so, yeah, he's a real staple in this community, and I think he's been a mentor to a lot of people.
Yes.
Yeah, and he certainly knows a lot. He has a lot of knowledge.
We're gonna get it out of him.
So, yeah, please appreciate Barry.
Jean, you're up, and I don't want to forget you up there in
Cyberland.
we're in Cyberland. Yeah, sure, Jean, if you'd like to add.
Whoops. Yes, thank you. I mean, I just have to reflect upon what everyone else has said so far, but yeah, definitely a mentor. And I was just trying to remember when I first met Barry and had a chat with him at town hall, and he explained everything to me and definitely encouraged me, and has just been there for everybody, townwide, countywide, and just an amazing history with the town. Really appreciate it. Wish I could be there. Thank you.
So I guess I first met Barry and when I was on the finance committee and worked with him at creating town meetings and town meeting handbooks. And the thing about Barry is he is a shining example of people dedicating their lives to make their community a better place to live in. And he has been a mentor and a friend, and he sincerely deserves this recognition. So thanks, Barry.
I've known Barry since I've been a little kid, you know, and it's like we're up here in town. My mom was a town employee for many years. And once I started getting involved into town politics in the mid-90s, first person I went to were the first two people were Barry and Bob. For people at home, Bob Parody, a former moderator, former select board member, and Barry were best of friends because they served together for many years. And I wouldn't be where I am without Barry or Bob, you know, and Barry's still here and I still go to him when I have stuff and we talk back and forth. And sometimes I have to hear that other side of the opinion. So he puts me in my place more than you know. So but it's constructive criticism. Barry is a perfect example of a public servant, you know, and a servant leader. You know, we've been watching TV advertisements of Mike Minogue saying how he's a servant leader. No, Barry is the example of a servant leader.
Mhm.
He's been doing it his whole adult life. And it shouldn't not be recognized. It should be recognized because he's made of an old mold. You know, once he's gone, you're not gonna be able to replace that. And that's why institutional knowledge is so important, you know, because you can't replace that once it's gone.
Right.
The way we have a chance, soak it up like a sponge and document it all down.
Not at all. Well said.
And I might add very quickly, Barry, I have to say, I was extremely surprised at how much Barry knew about Wampanoag people and Wampanoag history and Bourne, way farther than I do. He went back years when I came on, so thank you for that as well. You offered me a lot in that area. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Okay, Barry, it's your chance to rebut any.
Or-
And I've got the gavel, all right? So I'm gonna keep you on a short leash.
Everybody that knows me, Marcus, you're gonna have to use it. Well, all I can say is this is much more than anyone is deserved to be said today. And I guess when you reach 82, I guess you get to a point where you just keep going, and I'm just gonna say thank you to everybody. And my board of selectmen, town administrator, Marlene, who lets us just do our jobs, but she's always there to support us, the selectmen, and back to the commissioners. I got some real people that I need to thank. And I had two good guys back here, being a full-time selectman. And that's what allowed me to go spend a lot of time in the county. And there were two people that were really instrumental, and that was Eleanor McGaffin. I'm sure you've heard that name.
Oh, yeah.
And also Mary Leclerc, who's still going just like me.
That's right.
And we did a lot of good things in the county. And some of those things we started are still going today to the benefit of everybody. And Mark, you made mention of the hospital. And that was probably one of the toughest things I had to do. The commissioner said, we've lost just too much money. We can't keep it going. So you've got to go up there and just kind of shut it down. But I want to tell you something. Out of that, a wonderful thing happened, because people forget it was a tuberculosis hospital, but it also had a rehabilitation component, and we have a license for that. So the day I had to go up and announce it to everybody, that afternoon, I got a call from the Spalding people in Boston and said, we'd like to talk. So that is the outgrowth of how Spalding Hospital got here. The state allowed us to transfer our license. So out of that, it's a wonderful hospital for everybody. So it was a tough day, but it ended up being a good day.
That's great.
And I just want to say thank you to everybody that's here. This is way over the top. And I also want to introduce our newest member of our family, Elizabeth Gajot, is our new assistant town clerk. We stole her from Middleborough. I'm very, very pleased to have her. And lastly, I want to say to Michael Dutton, I haven't seen him in about 25 to 30 years. And after I left the county, I went out as the manager of Oak Bluffs. And one of the first people that came in to say hi, introduced himself, was Michael and his uncle. And said, Barry, anything we can do to help and make your job easier over here, we'll do it. So now, Michael, you and I have come full circle. So that's a
Very small world.
A lot of papers and a lot of ways that my name down there. And then I have to tell you that one last thing. I did leave OB, and the only reason I left OB was because Sheriff DeMello called me up and said, Barry, you gotta come home. I need your help. The commissioners are really raising hell with me. I said, Sheriff, I'm on the next boat. So I went from this far to the hill. So it was good. We were able to work out a lot of things that needed to be worked out.
Yeah.
So once again, I don't know how to say thank you to all of you here and all of you, and thank you so, so much. Very, very much.
Jerry, we're gonna ask you to come forward right up here. We're gonna do a photograph. I'm gonna ask the Bourne Select Board members to join us. I'm right in the middle there. We're gonna come up over to you. All right? Group photo,
Whatever you want.
That's the great thing about being a chairman. You can, as Melissa knows, you can pretty much do whatever you want. All right, so I'm gonna stand on one side. I'm gonna ask. Okay. So Barry,
Now I go on that side.
on behalf of our board, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Get that?
One big smile.
Cheese.
All
Cheese.
right.
That's great.
I was starting to look at all this.
Oh, I know. Barry. All right, it's not a retirement. Plenty more to do.
Look here, look there. Yeah, I know, but we do. Here. Okay, all right, I'll come to you.
You got it.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. The next item on our agenda, item 6, is a joint discussion between the commissioners and town officials here in Bourne regarding issues of concern and interest to the town. And one of the first issues that we wanted to sort of bring up was a status report. I understand Dylan Fernandez could not make it, but he's represented by staff. And I think that's probably the first item we want to get into, is to talk about this legislation, which was drafted with the help of Senator Fernandez and staff to transfer county property to the town of Bourne. So we've been on this for a long time, as long as I've been on the commissioners. And I understand we have someone here from
I know.
the senator's office. I'm going to call you to the podium if you'd like and introduce yourself, and feel free to give us an update on how that's progressing.
My name is Emily Tompkins. I'm the district director for Senator Fernandez. So I wanted to give an update on Bill H4992. So it has passed in the House of Representatives, and it's currently moving through the Senate committee process. It's been in Senate rules since January, and the committee reports that they've been working with Senate counsel on it. It's not abnormal for it to take a couple months in this process, especially since Article 97 bill, due to its constitutional requirements. Senator Fernandez has flagged this to the Senate President's office and Senate Council to continue to push this forward. So we will continue to do that, and we really hope to get this passed by the end of formal sessions. There is no guarantee, but we will continue to advocate for the system.
Emily, thank you. Are there any questions from the select board in Bourne?
Yeah, well, I'll go around, start with the select board. I don't give you, MJ, you go first this time. Any questions? Peter?
What's that?
Jean?
No, thank you.
No?
No, we're good.
Okay.
Emily, is there anything that we can do on our end to help move this along? Is there any issue, any questions, any senators that we might need to call to check in, weigh in?
So I will take that back to the team to see if there's something, you guys can do to help advocate for this to move forward. We in our office are doing everything we can to do that as well. So let me take that question back to the team and get you a firm answer on if there's anything further that you all can do too.
Yeah, we're more than happy to help in any way that the senator feels that we can be helpful in terms of addressing this. So please let them know. Commissioner Lyons, anything?
No, I'm just surprised that we're still dealing with
Yeah.
This piece of land. So the more help you can give, the better, because they have to.
projects they want to do. Yeah, so.
Just for the record, it's 0 County Road, Helen,
Yeah.
and 100 Dr. Julius. Yeah, so, okay.
Marlene, do you have anything to add? Okay, just
And
one.
the House bill number is 4992. So it's H4992.
Okay.
It's nice to remind people that it has passed the House. So we've gone through that hurdle, which is
Yeah,
sometimes more complicated than getting it through the Senate.
yes,
So
it is.
Commissioner Bergstrom, is there anything?
Well, just that, I've seen most of this process through, and it was very complicated. There was some conservation restrictions, there were other factors involved, previous leases and so on. So, and it was a long process of negotiation with the town of Bourne. I have to say, it took a while, but it all went very smoothly. We hashed out our differences. We came to an agreement on
Somewhat smoothly.
this is the way things should be done, not always the way things are.
We thought it was done that day, didn't we? We didn't-
Yeah.
Waiting for the legislature is another part of things that you have to deal with. But sounds like we're on the,
Yeah.
sounds like we're in the final day.
Yeah, and for the press that's here, we have a copy of the bill if you'd like to see that. Feel free to grab it. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Let's continue on. I have a brief news item to share with our colleagues here in Bourne. I received a message from Louisa Polanski. As you know, she's been the project manager for the Cape Cod Canal Bridge project, replacement of those two bridges. And she had texted me on Friday saying, "Hello, Mark, I wanted to share some good news. This afternoon, the Federal Highway Administration issued a record of decision and approval of the final EIS, completing the NEPA process for the Cape Cod bridges. It's the first record of decision for an EIS in Massachusetts since 1986. Let me know if you need any more information. Thank you to us and the Cape and Islands Municipal Leaders Association for all of the support, as well as thanks to the town board." So that's the latest. They're going to be coming out with a formal announcement, but I just think that this is a huge milestone to start with four of big projects in the town of Bourne. What this means is they can start moving on to the next phase of the project, and that is moving forward with the actual, the additional steps to get it ready for bids and proposals. So I wanted to share that with you, and feel free to comment or.
Sure.
Go ahead, Peter.
We've been very lucky since Louise has been brought on board by the Huey Driscoll administration to be in charge of the major projects of Mass DOT. Anne Marie and myself from the select board and Mark as the county commissioner. The three of us, and Barry, who's gone now, and Barry as well, we've been going to these meetings since the inception 3+ years ago. And Louise is is a very compassionate person. She'll sit there and listen, and she'll try to do what she can to help us out any way she can. She was a major player in the light at Upper Cape Tech when after Officer Dober was got into the accident, but it was in the works long before that. But excuse me, like I'm saying, just from my personal experience, Louise has been great. We're very lucky to have her, and and hopefully she'll be there for a while, because she's definitely the go-to person when you have any questions, and with her historical significance as well. She's been around different administrations, so she knows where everything is. So we're very lucky to have her at our disposal when we need her.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. Commissioners, any comments?
No, I think Anne Marie had.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I will say that at our last Bridge Advisory Committee, we sort of planted the seed of, and we've, excuse me, possibly having a more intimate conversation between the board and the reps from the mega project in regards to a memorandum of understanding. We've had subcommittee meetings with the select board and our recreation committee. I'm sure you're aware of some of the hiccups.
Yeah.
And access to the canal road, Concom, their concerns. So it's great conversation. A lot of decisions have been made surrounding it, a lot of promises. And so we sort of asked, and it is on our agenda for this select board meeting in possibly having just a smaller, more intimate meetings with respects to possibly navigating an MOU.
Right,
That's
so it's on paper and we can follow.
Right.
That's great.
Because, I'm preaching to the choir, but, Bourne will sacrifice many things during the construction
Yes,
process,
you will.
unlike any other community with a project of this magnitude. And, we have that impact, both positive. And again, we've already had some losses just by the sheer nature of this project. So we just want to be sure that, our town and the people within it they're at the forefront of those impact
Exactly.
decisions
Yeah.
that are being made.
Yeah.
So let me make sure I understand. So this MOU, as you envision it, would be to touch on some of the issues that you want to see the overall project address.
Yeah, like I said, we're gonna do an initial conversation at our select board meeting specific to that, and
Got it.
what is the consensus of the board, and and how we should approach MassDOT with this memorandum of understanding. So, yeah, it's just in the initial stages. But it was important to sort of plant that seed or, put it out there that, we have an interest in doing this.
It was credit. Yes.
No, I really empathize with the town of Bourne. Number one, it's a town that really is kind of cut in half and you're being really subjected to all of this. I mean, I was just thinking, wonder how it went when they did the canal. I mean, that must have been, there must be history written somewhere there on how that went. But there's so many people affected. And as you say, there's changes, but they really, the changes, so it's a double-edged sword that there's some upgrades, but you are losing land, people's property,
People.
and people, and
Resources,
there needs to be a recognition and compensation of some kind and an understanding of what
An
that
understanding.
compensation,
Right.
how that is going to go.
Just expectation, responsibility.
Exactly. Yeah, it did, I mean, from what I've read, it sounded like they were being as thoughtful as possible for people
They
who were being
absolutely are.
relocated, and
Sure.
it seemed like positive outcomes in the end. They were surprised themselves that it was a good transition, but it still is, you're leaving your home that you had for many years. It's a really big disruption to a town.
Mhm.
It's kind of flipping it up and letting it fall down again and where is it? So I very much empathize with you, and we would, support if you come to these things and you need support, we would definitely get on board and help write letters and put our shoulders into it.
Commissioner Bergstrom, do you want to chime in?
Well, this is another thing we've been looking at for years, and we knew it was coming down the pike, and we knew we'd have to be ready. I think even 2 years ago, maybe more than that, the Cape Cod Commission did a traffic study, because everything, once you get off that bridge, you're no longer the responsibility of the Army Corps, now the responsibility for the town and also, the people here on Cape Cod. So we have work to do as well as the Army Corps, and, through the commission, and so of course from us, do everything we can to make it an easy transition to the new bridge and the new travel lanes. I mean, it's gotten to the point, all of us know that's gotten to the point where something had to be done, As a matter of fact, we've had people in front of us who say that we have to look at the entire Cape, because if bridges are replaced and it's easier to get here, that there's going to be tons more traffic coming. I'm not so sure that's going to happen, but I do believe that it's certainly going to help the town.
Yeah, one of the questions I have for you folks is the railroad bridge. Is there any concern in Bourne about the health and longevity of the railroad bridge? Because I know in the past there have been issues regarding maintenance of it and the care for it. Has that come up at all in any of your discussions?
Well, I mean, they're clearly doing some work now.
Yeah, they're painting it right now, but overall, the last major work that was done on that bridge was when Bill Delahunt, Congressman Delahunt was around, so 2000s.
Yes.
I mean, because it's right outside my back door, I can hear the banging every day when they're doing the work over there. So, I mean, it's just nice that they're doing some preventative maintenance, on it, because if you let it go too long, it's going to be like anything else, will start to fall apart. So.
Yeah. I think one of the concerns that I have is that as the Army Corps divests itself of some of the major infrastructure along the canal, like the bridges, that this bridge, which is
federal asset.
It's a federal asset. Should we be finding some way to address the longevity and the long-term care of that facility? I would suggest, when you're talking about an MOU, I would recommend having that in the conversation, because it may very well be in your interest. I'm not suggesting a direction, but there may be some benefit for Mass DOT to take over that facility. The Army Corps budget is getting stretched, and they're no longer doing the kind of dredging that they used to do on the Cape and the islands. There are a host of other civil responsibilities that they have been divesting themselves from, rather than wait for the moment where something needs to happen to the bridge, the railroad bridge, that is. It may be some value in having a dialogue and a discussion about its health, its longevity, the condition that it's in, and then whether or not there's some value and transitioning the control over that facility like you've done with, or like has been done with the bridges. I just worry about that facility, particularly given the fact that here in Bourne, you folks have been incredible advocates for rail transportation. And as you're probably aware, Phil Eng has been the interim Secretary of Transportation, has been making the rounds in the region. And he has talked openly about making more investments in rail infrastructure.
Yes.
So they are
It's very interesting.
pursuing and working on getting more funding, more resources to improve rail infrastructure. This might be a good time to sort of have a conversation focused on the railroad. Also, just a thought.
Mark, can I take a minute?
Sure.
You know, one of the hats I wore is for quite a while, I was chairman of the Regional Transit Authority Advisory Board. And shortly after I got that position, we needed a new director. And looked around, a lot of applicants. Right on the top of the list was Tom. And I got to know Tom very well in our service together. And he was a tremendous asset to the town of Bourne. I know he was a state rep, but he was a tremendous asset in transportation. You know, not only the bridges, but also even rail transportation. We together rode on the first journey of the Cape Flyer, which he established. You know, so Mark is absolutely right. Rail, and along with all other means of mass transportation is very important. And Tom, you know, we established another bus line, I think, that came down here. So, you know, you had a tremendous asset in him. The Cape Flyer operates every weekend. Mark is absolutely right. We have to maintain those bridges and maintain the access that they provide to the Cape and to the town of Bourne. So, you know, many faceted issues here besides just the Sagamore Bridge that's being built. But, you know, the town of Bourne, unfortunately or fortunately, is right on the line for all this stuff.
Yeah. And if I could just echo something that Ron said, and then I'll bring it back over to you, Peter. I think we owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to the town of Bourne.
Mm-hmm.
Because your advocacy, your engagement, your involvement, these are not just bridge, they certainly have an impact in Bourne, but clearly they are important regional infrastructure components. They play a major role in the region's transportation system. So we owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to you for your leadership, your engagement, you folks being sort of on top of this and being fully engaged. That's why when Commissioner Lyon says that if we can be helpful in any way, by all means, we are there to stand shoulder to shoulder with you to make sure that, you know, collectively your interests are addressed as well. Now, I know, Peter, you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that. I think going forward, we need to make sure that we negotiate a long-term maintenance or long-term planning for the two bridges to Bourne, the Sagamore Bridge, once they're completed, but as well as the railroad bridge. And the reason why I say that is the U.S. Army Corps has done great since the 1930s to keep those assets, you know, maintained. Where MassDOT, if you look at the Mississauga Bridge, the Fore River Bridge, the Summer and Callahan Tunnel, deferred maintenance is like the last thing on their list. And I don't want this to fall into the same trap. So I want to make sure that there's a dedicated funding source in the state budget going forward to maintain these bridges, because especially the Bourne and Sagamore, because they're the only ways on and off the Cape by car, you know, by vehicle. And the rail bridge, the vertical lift railroad bridge is the only way on and off the Cape by train. So we need to keep on advocating for a long-term maintenance program, because if they let it fall apart, I don't want this to be another problem like the Summer and Callahan Tunnel where they had to shut it down for months.
Right.
So, I mean, this is in our backyard, and it's not only going to affect us around here, it's going to affect the whole region.
Right.
Good point. MJ?
I think you always have to remember that every car that comes to the Cape comes through Bourne.
Yeah.
Every single one. And the same is true for the rail. It all comes through Bourne. And we as a town deal with a lot that puts a lot of impact on us coming on, going off. It affects us as a community. Anyone who tried to go from Bourne to Hyannis last week when we had that tremendous
Unbelievable.
double accidents, it was horrible. So I think we do need to plan. And we have to have a vision. We have to talk about what is our future vision for rail. I mean, we've got the Sagamore Bridges, we've got advocacy for building that. We've got advocacy for building the Bourne Bridge, but we don't have any money for it. And then how are we going to deal with the rail bridge too? So this is a great opportunity for us to talk about our vision for transportation on Cape Cod in the future and take this opportunity to plan for that vision. Because if you don't incorporate it in this planning, it'll be more difficult to do it later. So I think a regional conversation would be really awesome.
Commissioner Lyon.
Well, I'm going to go back to a conversation that went like, fell like a rock when it was brought up and we had to kind of joke it out. And that was the word tolls, and I keep reading, there's not going to be any tolls. There's no tolls. No, and I'm like, why couldn't we put a toll on the bridge? And I'm not saying, I do think you can with these transponders in the beginning when we used to have the turnstiles. Yes. Cannot have it.
Frank.
Yeah, I know. We cannot have it because it will be, 25 miles of backup. However, now with electronic, scanning and all of this, you could have a ticket where every resident somehow got got flagged.
They're exempt from the toll.
Yeah, they're exempt from the toll because people go back and forth all the time, whatever. But people who are coming to visit and even businesses that come on a regular basis could have maybe by a half, whatever there's a way to do this. And why not? I mean, you go through New York, it can cost you $125 just to go through the city from one end to the other and never leave New York because you're going over all these bridges that are $15. And I'm not saying it has to be that high, but to have something to a revenue stream that goes to the maintenance of these things and to the maintenance of the surrounding area of Bourne. You also put up with we're getting more electric cars, but you're putting up with all of the pollution that comes with all of that traffic coming over all the time. There should be some sort of recognition.
That was nice of you to pick a hot button issue. To liven up the meeting.
This was brought up before. I remember it was like it was Clay Schofield that said it, and then the commission had to deal with it.
Yeah.
He said, no, it wasn't talking about tolls.
Note that it was Commissioner, for the record, it was Commissioner Lyon.
I was on it was trolls under.
Not Commissioner Ford or Commissioner Bergstrom.
So we're really talking about the trolls.
The troll, there you go.
Yeah, the trolls under the bridge.
Very good.
Anyway,
Is there any other
I know it's
business?
a dirty
on
word,
the
but
bridge
it's something
that you'd
that
like to
it's
talk
going to
about?
have to be confirmed.
No. Okay. The next item that I'd like to bring up is that in front of you is a list of the services that we provide in Barnstable County.
Yeah, I like this.
And we've asked staff to put this together for us so that we can, at some point, this is not for today's discussion, but it's sort of maybe homework, if you want to call it that. Think of the things that we're doing. This is the list. And I'm sure there's some things that we've missed. But everybody knows about the work of the cooperative extension. People know about our dredging program. They're familiar with a host of other services that we provide. We do, obviously, IT is an important component of our relationship here in the town of Bourne. What we wanted to do is have a list of the things that we do. If you would like us to add to the list, if you think we should subtract to the list. And the reason why I bring this up is that we've been doing some long-term financial planning for the county. And the thing that we're concerned about, like municipalities, is that when we look at our revenue projections long-term, and when we look at our expenditure projections long-term, every municipality is seeing a huge disparity, a gap. All right. Increasingly, our municipalities are finding themselves having to have more overrides, finding ways to keep up, and looking for creative ways to keep up with expenditures that are going up at an accelerating rate. Now, the county's faced with the same thing. Our revenue, when you look at our revenue projections over a 10-year period, they're only increasing at a roughly 2 to 3% margin, whereas expenses are at least double that. So we're projecting that in a couple of years, we're going to have to start making some very, very difficult decisions. And we've already had some discussions. We've heard from some in the community about the services that we provide that are important to the municipalities. Because there are many people who believe that the county's first obligation is just to make sure that it's providing the support services to the towns. And so we want to make sure that you can, any feedback, comments that you might have, and this is a discussion that's going on with the managers as well. And that is that there are things that in here that the town of Warren, maybe we could do away with. We may not necessarily need to do anymore. If there are things that do you have yours, Peter? You're looking at
Sharing.
anybody else? Michael, can you just make the rounds? And even for folks in the audience, feel free to share it with anybody that you want. If you'd like one of these, we can hand it out to you. Emily, you might enjoy taking a look at this.
If I could just add, I mean, I really do feel our role is to help alleviate tax burdens to the towns by providing services that could be regionalized. You pay something, but it's not going to be the same. And sometimes we think, wow, if we just thought of that, we could have had there's a lot of people, a lot of towns would benefit from this as well as us. I think that's really what we're looking for. And because, we could just keep on going saying we're doing a great job on what we're doing, but as time goes on, needs change, technologies change, approaches change. And we're going into dire times, so we really do have to stick together on a lot of this stuff where we can share resources and benefit everyone. So it's time to really start thinking about working together as opposed to what do we just need. So.
Commissioner.
Is there?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, go right ahead.
yeah, Mark is absolutely right. There's darker clouds on the horizon. One of the things we have going for us is that the current administrator and the commissioners, the assembly, very frugal and very fortunate. We've received money from the Registry of Deeds, which has allowed our revenues to exceed our expenses for a number of years. We put aside money for a revenue contingency. So at least for a year or two, I mean, it's not like we're going to be immediately up against it. We're looking down the road 5 years. And unlike a town, I mean, the situation is you decide how much you need to spend and then you set the levy. Okay, we don't do that. We have to anticipate revenue and work within that revenue because you don't have the ability to raise taxes to cover it. And I think that but we're all in the same boat. Inflationary pressures, affecting all of us. Healthcare costs are a big thing. I have confidence we'll get this with good leadership. I have confidence in leadership in Bourne and other towns. So we'll just have to deal with what these storm clouds on the horizon. And we will take another look at what the county does. And if we have to, we'll have to decide what services are essential and what we can do without for a short time.
Thank you. Did you?
No, Amber, did you?
Go ahead, Anne.
Has anyone had a novel idea on reducing the amount of time it takes to get a permit to dredge?
Oh, that'd
yeah.
be nice.
Well, we've actually discussed that.
We have had meetings, conferences.
Right, we do an annual dredging summit every year. We bring in the regulatory agencies to find ways to smooth this process out. Ken Cirillo, our dredging coordinator, he deals with this constantly. We've actually talked about, now this is a question for you. We've actually had a discussion internally. We haven't resolved it yet, but there was a study done looking at the operations of the dredge program. And we've actually been considering and discussing, but there's been no final resolution on this, is whether or not we need to actually have someone on board on the county dredge staff to be an advocate for the town, because the permitting is a municipal responsibility.
Yeah.
But what it does is because we're in charge of the dredge and the operations, if a municipality is having difficulty getting its permits, it slows down our operations. And because of the backlog of permitting and the difficulties in getting the permits issued on a timely basis, it has a huge impact on our operations. For a while, we were watching the dredge department continually go in the red. All right, because of these problems. So it's in your interest, it's in our interest to take care of this. We do have a study that shows that there are a variety of ways that the county could play a leadership role in tackling the permitting problem. And this may be worth a separate discussion to go into the details on this, because the last time we brought this up to the assembly, we didn't necessarily get a favorable reception. So we've been looking at increasing the capacity of our dredge department to tackle this problem. And we've taken another pass at the studies, and we brought a consultant on board who clearly in these studies has recommended that the county do more. We could actually save money, save you money, potentially. There was even a recommendation to consider consolidating permitting services. All right. One of the options in the study was, would the towns prefer that the county do the permitting? And there are pros and cons on that. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but that was one of the options. I'm going to ask Michael, because I'm sort of paraphrasing the various options here. And I think, I don't know, Ken Cirillo was on, but this is something that we've actually spent.
Can I jump in before you go to Michael, just for 1 second?
Well,
You know, at that
Commissioner
conference,
Bergstrom wanted to jump.
I'm sorry, but at that conference, they were explaining, number one, they were down from 20 people to 3. You know, at that point, the Doge cuts were in place, and, you know, we were hoping somebody was still there to do some permit to anybody. But they did put out a way of trying to streamline that process, and I don't think it's gone as well as, you know, it looked on paper. It looked like you could just put this in and, you know, press a couple of buttons. So, you know, it does take money to make money sometimes, and you do have to get that person hired to be able to pursue these things. And that's really what I wanted to say. I mean, they are well aware of this and they're stretched. So what can we do under these circumstances? I'm sorry, thank you.
Yeah, just to emphasize, sometimes you talk about all the things the county does, and then you come to dredging and they say, well, it's sort of an operations thing. But, you know, of course, I live in Chatham, so I'm familiar with dredging. We're pushing the same sand around for years, you know. But you know, I can't overemphasize the importance of the marine economy to the towns on Cape Cod. You know, I mean, it's a basis of a lot of our economic activity. So I know my fellow commissioners are well, and the administrator are well aware of the need to keep our estuary full. Also, we also nourish the beaches. You know, I don't know if you do that in Bourne, certainly do in Chatham. You know, so if the visitors arrive, they have a place to put their flight. So it is important, and I know we recognize the importance of that. As Mark says, it may be that we need somebody in an office in front of a computer as well as somebody on the boat, you know, taking care of the operations, because a lot of it, the permitting especially, is something that we have to look into. I think that central permitting, I mean, how many towns have someone in their office that knows a lot about permitting dredging? We were fortunate in Chatham because we hired someone for the Harbor Masters Department from the Army Corps who had experience in that. So Ted Keon, so he was able to do that, but that's a luxury for a lot of other towns. So if we had someone at the county who could make sure that their permits are up to snuff and that they're there when we get there, that would go a long way to make it a lot easier. So,
Yeah. By the way, your harbor master is terrific.
Yeah.
All right. Bourne you do a great job. We have a dredge advisory committee advising the county. Michael and I are at all of the meetings, and Bourne's participation has been superb. And it's very helpful, particularly even on this particular topic as well. So I just want you to know, we are looking at a variety of options. We may need your help as we come down to maybe picking and choosing them. We may actually want to come to a Bourne Select Board meeting with, make a presentation on the options and to get your further input on this, if that's something that you'd like us to do.
Excuse me. We're a waterfront community, you know, and I think dredging is a must that should be budgeted for, because it's rather expensive. I know that when we went out to bid to do a dredge project over by Taylor's Point Marina, which was very small, and it was so expensive that we couldn't fill it, you know, so we have to go out to bid or figure out some other funding source to make it happen.
Right.
It's just, but, you know, and we hear it every year from the Shore and Harbor Commission, which is experts that's in with Hannah Lawrence as the DNR superintendent,
Right.
Director. It's just, I don't know, it's just dredging is the fabric of this, of the Cape and Islands.
Absolutely.
And we,
Now, let me ask you on the topic of dredging, a question that I have for you is have you been able to get state money, state funding for dredging in the past?
Yes.
You have.
yeah,
Were you aware that there's no sort of designated dredging funding in the state budget?
yes.
Okay.
Mark, I may be wrong, and I talked to Hazley Luddy and she
No.
said there is.
Well, no, there isn't. What we're doing is the Cape delegation, and I just want to flag this because Emily is here. The Cape delegation has been working hard with us over the past few weeks to amend. We're looking at targeting two pieces of legislation, the Mass Ready Act, which is the environmental bond bill. All right. Hadley Luddy was able to get an amendment on the House side to put dredging in that. Because historically, the way the administration has done dredging in the Commonwealth is that it's been usually a provision in a bond bill. And then over a period of years, they will get some of that authorization activated and then put funding in the Economic Development Office, the Mass Office of Economic Development. They have the dredging program parked there because they see dredging as important as Commissioner Bergstrom said to the state's economy. So they put the money there. So there are some initiatives that are going on in the House that you should be aware of right now. Hadley Luddy is targeting and was successful in getting an amendment in the Mass Ready Act to have funding designated there. And there's talk about an economic development bill coming up and having monies authorized in the economic development bill for this program. All right. So if Senator Fernandez can be helpful on the Senate side, that would be huge because the bill has been amended. Although I don't know if in the House they've approved the total bill as amended. I do believe that Representative Luddy, Commissioner Bergstrom said she was successful, but this is only at the early part of the process. As you know, it's got to go to the Senate, got to go to conference. And my hope as chairman of this board is that we have language in both bills just to cover ourselves. We've done dredging in economic development bills in the past. So my hope is that we can continue to do that, but also having something in the Mass Ready Act, the environmental bond bill, is sort of a backstop as a way to provide some added insurance that we have funding there. So that's the latest from my end on that. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Mike Dutton, because we talk daily on this stuff. Commissioner Bergstrom, anything else?
Yeah, just to say that, you know, this would seem, dredging would, to us, seem like a Cape issue, but all of that economic activity that goes with boating and fishing and so on produces tax revenue in the entire state.
Yeah.
They have a stake in making sure that we have, our estuaries are open and that economic activity continues.
In the talking points that we've presented to the representatives, we've identified some of the economic benefits of dredging to the Commonwealth and some of the boating revenue that's generated as well. Commissioner Lyons, did you want to?
No, I think everything has been said.
MJ.
I'm just curious, because I'm gonna say was, when you had done the dredging study and come to Simla with some of the questions for dredging, it was a real backup. The Barnstable County had dredge operations available that couldn't be.
Exactly.
That's how you ran into the deficit, because you were ready to do it, but the permits hadn't gone through. So has that improved, or are you still facing that issue that towns can't get their permits? So even though they want to dredge and have money to dredge and you're ready to dredge, we can't do it. So
as Commissioner Lyons said, one of the problems that we're encountering is at the federal level, with the federal cuts, the DOGE cuts, All right. We have lost federal agency personnel in the federal regulatory agencies.
Right.
All right, that can help process this stuff, move this stuff along. The people that are left behind, in many cases, are doing the best they can, but they are, in many cases, shorthanded. Also, sometimes there's a need for science. All right, and we have an administration in Washington that is not what I would call pro-science. All right, so sometimes our ability to get a permit expedited depends, quite frankly, on the breeding habits of the flounder or some other
Yeah.
creature, right?
The white. flag.
Right. So, and sometimes horseshoe crabs, sometimes that requires science. And lately, science has been difficult to get federal support for. And even the winter flounder studies, all right, Mass Division of Marine Fisheries, they rely on winter flounder studies. And that is something that has been challenging to get funding for on a year-to-year basis. So the Division of Marine Fisheries, I'm a huge advocate for the DMF budget because oftentimes they need help in doing this stuff. Flounder studies are incredibly important. We are learning that the flounder have very unique breeding habits, and they differ from the north side to the south side. And so based on those variations, we're now learning that we can have some windows of opportunity expanded for dredging in some areas. So the science directly leads to opportunities to get the dredging equipment in to various harbors. So that's important. So is it where we want to be? No, but it requires sustained vigilance by us. So we are constantly, just so that you know, we are constantly talking to Division of Marine Fisheries. Are they adequately funded? Do they have the studies, the money for the studies to do the flounder stuff? We're asking for them for help to make sure that the towns have monies to basically underwrite some of the, at least some of the cost of dredging. Ron talked about Chatham, his community. They dredge, I mean, the dredging, if they had to do it alone, they'd be ponying up almost $1 million at least every 2 years. That's a lot of money for a community. And if you're on your own, I mean, you've got your own needs that are challenging to meet. So we see the existence of the state dredging program as vital to the financial help of all of our communities. And we'll continue to advocate for that. And so far, the Cape delegation's been terrific to work with. On the House side, everybody's been engaged. When we drafted the amendments for Representative Luddy, she jumped on them. She shared them with delegation members. I called up on the House side, most of the offices, and everybody said that they were on board with her amendments. So very shortly, and that's why it's great that Emily's here, is because very shortly this battle is going to shift to the Senate. And we're going to have a lot of discussions there on this. All right, Peter.
On top of, never mind funding for dredging, but something I think the county could advocate for our Cape towns is the outdated local aid formula. What happened is
Did you read our report?
not fully.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, just in general, if you're inside of 128, you can print the money for your communities. But once you start going to southeastern Mass, Cape and Islands, out to the Berkshires, the formula doesn't work.
Right. Right.
And so
Well, I'm so happy that you brought this up.
Right. And so is
Mr. Meyer.
Senator Fernandez.
Yeah, because Senator
Because
Fernandez has
he's on
taken a
this, yeah.
leadership role in this issue. We are so thrilled that he has decided to tackle this
Mhm.
and has had some success in it. We have prepared a draft report. We're doing the final touches on it with town managers and finance directors around the Cape, showing the extent to which we get shortchanged in local aid. And I have to commend our delegation, particularly Senator Fernandez, for playing a leadership role up on Beacon Hill, talking about how hard we've been hit and advocating and getting successfully through the Senate budget. The FY27 Senate budget has language in it to create a commission to look at reforming and improving the formula so that it's based more on need
Right.
than on equalized valuation.
Right.
Right. And we all know that in town of Bourne, you have a lot of property that's very valuable, but that is not
Nobody
a proper determination of your wealth in your ability to pay,
Right.
right? So we need to have a more balanced formula that takes into account median family income and other indicators, poverty and so forth.
Not only,
So,
not only that, but in Bourne, we have a lot of state-owned property that is subject to appropriation every year. Is when we get, Mass Maritime, Joint Base, Cape Cod,
Right.
Scottsdale Beach, and the list can go on. And all of a sudden it's based on appropriation and it changes every year.
Hmm.
I mean, and the more property that Mass Maritime acquires, it takes it off the books. If it's through the nonprofit and donate it to them, that's less tax revenue for us.
Right.
I mean, going down Academy Drive, my home street right now. They have all kinds of construction going on with the geotech and with the new science building and everything else. And Mass Maritime is a tremendous asset. However, my own street is ripped apart. Potholes, the whole 9 yards because of their heavy equipment. And who's gonna get stuck fixing it? It's probably gonna come out of our chapter 90 funds.
Right.
Like the state, this is part of, so another thing we gotta add to the MOU is.
Exactly.
Their projects are affecting our town-owned roads.
yeah,
We should not be stuck with the burden of paying
Right.
paying for that damage.
so I got Commissioner Lyons and then Commissioner
Okay.
Bergstrom.
No, I mean, I live in Wellfleet. I do want you to know that Wellfleet did send a letter on behalf of the lottery tax and this local aid saying, and we did outline not just how it is, more money has been spent on, less money is coming back. I mean, the share isn't quite right. But also we put out all of the different expenses we have and the impacts we have. In those homes, jack up the value of a town. Most of them aren't lived in, but we still also, all the towns have to have the amount of fire, if there's fire in those areas. We have to be able to get to them. We have to be able to get into them. DPW, all of those things are added costs, whether those people are there or not. And the valuation, what we're getting back in taxes is not meeting the need. So they really have to look at Cape Cod. There, it really is a working person's place for the year round. And as you go out in the Outer Cape, it's a part-time working, it's a seasonal working, and that revenue just isn't there. And now people, they're house rich and, dirt poor. So it's just not working out as well as it used to. I mean, not that it was ever quite what it should have been, but
Yeah, I gotta
Anyway.
get Commissioner Bergstrom. Yeah.
No, actually, I've decided that enough has been said on my.
okay.
All right. All right, so
We have those points. Okay.
in terms of the services that we're providing, is there any other hot button issue? We can talk dredging perhaps for a whole day. And I'm gonna cut that off.
As you look at this, you will come up and say,
Yeah.
this could be
Yeah.
expanded here, or we could do something under that category, and
So-
let's
By all means, feel free
have
to
the
spend some time with us.
Topic for a whole separate meeting.
I know, it is.
I know.
This would be a good meeting.
I know.
Yeah.
So we can revisit this in our future
Yeah.
discussions, okay?
Okay.
So what I'd like to do, if it's okay, is we actually have a couple of items on the general business agenda. One is an update from Carrie Purcell on our composting initiative. She was here a moment ago.
Oh, she must have just had to go to the
And then
ladies'
the
room.
other topic is on,
Oh, we could go to
Okay.
Tick-Borne.
so it looks like Mike McGuire was gonna at least carry, is everything okay with Carrie?
She said, do you think it'd be okay if I use the restroom? I said, yep. but
Of course, they'll put you right
Yeah,
on.
there you go. All right.
Okay.
I'll step up real quick, not to filibuster. I do just a couple things. I'm the director of the Cooperative Extension Department of Barnstable County. Lived in Pecasset in 1999 and 2001. And during that time, I was an AmeriCorps member, and Mark and Steve Terrell, Mark was a select board member.
Yeah.
The two children, Carrie Ann Terrell and Jeff, who passed 3 years ago. I just want to mention both of them. They were incredible community assets as Terrells.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't come to the without thinking about them. And Laura York too, who have done a ton of beautification improvement projects. I know her son Rick really well. He was a shellfish constable in Mashpee for a long time. I was thinking about all the talk about railroads, and when I lived here, I remember learning a lot about Grover Cleveland, and I think he had a lot to do with one of the railheads getting established at Gray Gables.
Mhm.
There's a really rich and strong history here in this community that, as a department head and director, I try to impart to our staff. And so they're spending a lot of times doing different things in this community that maybe you don't hear about in the background. With the Flounder study, I was actually at UMass. Amherst, Gloucester Research Station, they just got it completely rebuilt, beautiful. They're doing a lot of DNA work, which is water sampling, track DNA from see if there's a presence of certain species there. We're trying to work on more dialed in flounder DNA research with them. So a lot of things going on in the background, but in the meantime, you're gonna hear from two of our staff, Carrie Parcell, our solid waste and composting expert, and Mr. Cattle, who's an entomologist and horticulturist, can talk to you about tick-borne disease prevention. If you think about extension, Commissioner Forrest, Chairperson Forrest, and I talked a lot about sometimes cooperative extension doesn't ring true to what we do. So think of us as a natural resource department.
Mhm. Right.
Right.
Okay.
Carrie, you
Gary.
ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. And by the way, while Carrie is getting herself set up, I want to just give a shout out to Phil Goddard, sitting in the back there. Phil has been a tremendous asset for our advisory group, helping Carrie sort of scope out and figure out how to tackle composting. And I just want to publicly thank Phil for all of his input, his sage advice. It's very much appreciated.
Can I just say something while Carrie's getting ready?
Good.
In Wellfleet, we have a very good recycling team. We get kudos from the county and all of that. However, we do have a compost place where you can bring your compost. And what I believe was Mark, he said, it's the best compost is when you do your own. And because even though you're bringing compost there, that is still getting shipped off Cape. And it's just as much of it, well, it's not as much, but there is still an expense to bringing it to your local transfer station. So I'm just setting this up. I'm setting it up for Carrie that this is such a needed thing. And when I talk about that we're trying to build a compost here on the Cape, I think that in itself is going to be a benefit to, I didn't hear my voice there.
Have an echo.
A benefit to all of the towns once this is up and running.
You ready, Carrie?
There you go, Carrie.
Share my screen.
I could say more, Carrie, if you want.
I appreciate all the support that I've had so far, especially over the last few years. And thanks for recognizing, Bill, you beat me to it because he was somebody that I was gonna mention has been integral in this, so. Let me just share my screen.
I think
Be off mic, correct, to avoid.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't want the echoes. Otherwise Ian will throw something at you.
Okay. Thanks.
Here we go. Bingo.
This one. Great, okay, perfect. So I am very pleased to be here. Thank you so much to the commissioners, the town of Bourne. I have not had a chance to speak with the select board yet or with the town management about this project quite yet. And thank you to the community at large for participating in this or watching it at a later date. This is something that's been kind of true to my heart as well as a lot of folks here on Cape Cod. And I'll explain why. But we've been working on this since about 2020 with my involvement, and there's been some previous involvement with the town of Bourne and Phil Goddard, as well as other efforts with the town of Yarmouth. And so this is really awesome that we get to have this conversation and see it move forward. So some of the updates that I give, it might be a little redundant for some folks. Some of it might be new. I had just heard from KP Law this morning while I was driving here to be present. So I don't have too much in that, but I do have some updates there. So for those of you who don't know me, hanging out with Phil right there. It's not my professional photo. Yeah, so I'm just really glad to be standing here today and talking about all the progress that we've made again since my involvement in 2020 all the way until now or in the summer of 2026. There's been a lot of many moving parts. I've been the point of contact for that. So this involves not only the 4 Upper Cape towns, but it involves Joint Base Cape Cod and Mass Development, as well as Barnstable County. So I just kind of want to provide some background here. So does everybody in this room know about solid waste bans? At all? Many of you? Yeah.
Terry, I hate to interrupt, but can you go back to that last slide? I think you need to explain a little bit more your background and the work that you do for the county, because it's very, very important, and I don't want to gloss it over. If you could just expand a little bit further on your, I just be humble, but your title, your role, and because you interact with DEP, you interact with a lot of people that are crucial in terms of this discussion of solid waste, composting, food waste, which is increasingly a hot topic.
Okay, great. Okay, so again, there's me hanging out with Phil. So again, I'm Carrie Purcell. I am with Mass DEP in Barnstable County. I've been in this position for 9.5 years now. It's turning into a 50-50 split with the county and DEP. As of July 1, I will be also working with the South Coast. So I will be the solid waste and recycling coordinator for the South Coast Cape and Islands, which is going to equate to 32 communities. So you will see me working with New Bedford, Dartmouth, Plymouth, Cohasset, Marion, Rockland, Wareham. So those South Coast communities, which we have a lot in common with, although I think some of those are more city-based. So it'll take me a little bit of time to get to know them the way that I know intimately what's going on here with the Cape and Islands. My background, I have a master's of public administration and emergency management. I primarily work with the DPWs and transfer stations. I work a lot with the solid waste and recycling committees. And my main primary goal is to work with towns to divert materials that no longer need to be in the waste stream, to find markets for those materials, and to lower costs and to protect our environment at the same time. So if there's something that's a divertible material, I work with those communities. I sort of work with them regionally. I know that's a big word here on the Cape, but we try to provide access, resource sharing. And I was recently speaking with a community that was really, really excited that we were going to be, connected more with the South Coast. And the reason being is a lot of our vendors and outlets are off Cape. So one of the things that, we were, and I'll kind of go into this is, why are we doing this? Why does it matter? And what does it mean to our community and the members of the community? And how are we responding to that need? So I've been sort of prolific in working with all of the communities, working with the commissioners and Michael Dutton, who immediately supported this. The second I met him, I was like, hi, I need to talk to you about this. And I got immediate support, and I speak to him often and frequently. So that's been a privilege. And then again with Mike McGuire and his support for everything that's been going on. So I get to keep rolling with these things. As of July 1, my job description is going to change slightly. We don't know what the final outcome is quite yet, at least I don't. But see sort of how that manifests with not only this project, but other projects that I can assist on with the Cape.
That's
All right.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. Waste bans, they've been in existence since the 1990s. Began with mercury and other materials, things like whole tires, white goods, which are appliances, things like that are banned from going into the landfill or to a waste energy facility. One of the things that has come up with waste bans is starting back in 2014, DEP put a waste ban on commercial food waste of 1 ton or more in a week. So there are some facilities here on the Cape and Islands, that's my district specifically, although it is expanding July 1 to the South Coast, is that any facility, restaurant, packaging, manufacturer, base, campus, if you will, has to divert that amount of waste. The problem is we don't have infrastructure around here or any sort of lack thereof of it. And I'll go into that a little bit more with the words composting desert. So I use that to sort of say, when we think of a desert, something is vast, but there might not be a lot of resources within there. And that again is, if you look at Barnstable County, there is no real infrastructure built to accommodate commercial waste. There is space, however, but we also have to look at, you know, our marshlands, the environment around there, permitting. And so going through all of this, we started with a study in 2020 and 2021, where I worked with the special projects team, you know, Patty Deal and Sarah White. And this was sort of commissioned by a former county administrator who had visited Copenhagen and Denmark, and they had this beautiful waste energy facility where a ski slope came down and it was promised to be very clean. We have a memorandum here, so we actually cannot, a moratorium, I'm sorry, on these types of facilities, so they cannot expand and or build. And in fact, they used to have 9 when I started back in 2017. Now there are only 5 facilities that are waste to energy. And then the other option is landfill. Landfills really aren't permitting their closing, with the exception of Town Bourne. And then we ship a lot of our waste outside of here. So the reason why food waste is so important is it's an organic material that goes along with our shrubs, our leaf and yard waste. And it, you know, creates protective for our single cell aquifer with our water and our drinking water. It's a soil amendment that's not, you know, sort of as nasty as fertilizers and things like that. So it's something that's very important. When you put the food waste and you put the leaf and yard waste and the stumps and all the other stuff there, you're looking at approximately 30 to 36% of our waste stream. That's easily divertible, very valuable in its use, and it's something that we need to capture and divert from our waste stream in order to sort of save capacity for where our waste is going. So that's sort of that why I use the terminology composting. So I know these are kind of wordy slides, but I wanted to talk a little bit about this. If you're unfamiliar with the National Store, it's when the Chinese sort of closed down their ports because countries were sending them a lot of materials that was of quantity and not quality. So they closed down the ports, they did more inspections, they limited the number of business licenses that they were handing out to the exporters of those materials. They made us clean it up, but while they did that, it created a backlog, and the cost of recycling, the cost to do business went up. And we all know, and I always say this when I talk to folks, is that services are not free. Even when a service is free to that individual, you know, take for example, our hazardous waste events, your residents get to go to these 4 events between other towns for free, right? But somebody somewhere else is paying for that on the backside. So again, what happened was after these prices sort of went through the roof, this is in 2018 through 2019, and then 2020 with COVID really sort of backed us up. And the reason being is we were getting rid of about 25% more waste because people were at home. They had time to clean out their garages and their basements and repaint their house. Say, finally, I'm going to buy that recliner that I really wanted. Things were being shipped in, and there was lots of packaging because people didn't want to leave their home, and personal protection equipment, and, you know, masks and things like that were starting to build up. So we really saw this huge backlog, and people lost their jobs. So there was less, you know, trash people on the road that were actually going around and collecting this stuff, just for this, you know, the sake of protection of our community. So with that, we dedicated a team. Again, it was Patty Daly and Michelle White, myself, and then we sort of had a steering committee where we worked with the former county administrator Jack Units and Sean O'Brien, who has since retired. And we just really sort of put it together. The county paid for this study and they agreed to the $150,000, which was kind of a fun ask that I got to make back then. And we hired a couple of vendors who really looked at hard to recycle materials as well as the basic stuff, you know, your tin, glass, newspaper, mixed paper, magazines, things like that. And then the cost benefit analysis of out of state travel for our waste. And they came up with 2 recommendations. One was construction demolition, which is We have outlets for them. It is expensive, it remains expensive, and it is a high volume material that comes through. But we weren't really worried about tackling that because there was vendors available. The other set was food waste. Why are we not, talking about food waste? Why are we not building infrastructure for that? And why are we not looking at the other with leaf and yard waste and combining that as a valuable resource? So that was really the study. After a while, following the study, I was able to get permission from the county and write a grant. It's a non-DEP grant. I can't write grants for DEP, not in my current position, especially when I'm 50-50 with them. But I can write grants otherwise, as long as, it's there, they're approved. So with 11-hour racing, I was able to procure about $80,000 from them. 11th Hour Racing, if you don't know, is a private family funding course through Google or the Eric and Schmidt Foundation. And they were looking for coastal community composting projects that were in the works. So I hit them up pretty quick. With that, we were able to put out an RFP. We wound up hiring SES engineers and contracting with them. We're looking at continuing retainment now, but July 1st is right around the corner. So I just need to get a hold of him first. So we can continue to work. We did earmark some of that. Again, the county is putting up about another $45,000 on top of that 150 to continue this project. And then we just wanted to identify our stakeholders, which is again, Joint Base Cape Cod, Barnstable County, and the 4 Upper Cape towns. The reason why we're not expanding further is because we're limiting the permit under a Mass General permit, which only allows 12,000 tons or more per year, or I'm sorry, less per year. But eventually, as we prove the capacity and we have this proof of concept that the base is looking at, we'll be able to expand as we move through this. We were working with Mass Development as well because they have first right of refusal for military and other state-owned property that are not being used for those types of programs. So this particular parcel is no longer being deemed. Mass Development had first right of refusal. Eric and I had a really, really great, sort of consensus that we really wanted it and they understood it, and they're more than willing to work with us, the state, the military, in that divestment process. We've had lots of meetings on that identification. Obviously, we need to look at the environmental impact, whether it needs to be mitigated, if there's any contamination. PFAS is a big buzzword that we've been hearing over several years. And then outreach and education, attending those MCQ meetings at the base. It's been in the newspaper. We talk about it. It's a public project, even though I try to keep as much hush hush as the point of contact, because I want to make sure that the information that's out there is true and ready to be shared. So we do a lot of that. Again, this is sort of a wordy slide, but again, I knew it was going into your packet, so I think it's a little more helpful. So right now, I would say the update is, and I just received an email this morning in conversation with Michael Dutton and KP Law, which is the county's law firm and sort of legal counsel. So I have not had a chance to open that, but basically it's saying, here's the standard template. We're going to work through that and get through there. And so we're working on that piece. I'm, even though I've been in this position for 9.5 years, I understand that governments work really slow because I want results yesterday, so it's taken a minute, but we're getting there. And like I said, we have a project manager, project developer that will be announced or hired on July 1, as long as we find out, sort of what the outcome of that description looks like, the job description. Obviously, we're going to focus on some future funding. Commissioner, thank you for letting me know that it's okay to talk about some of the folks that we're moving in. Again, I will seek out some financial assistance through the grant funds with 11th Hour Racing. We put it in earmark in Congressman Keating's office. I've not heard back on that. I'm not sure if anything's been announced. That I believe it was, we went high to the sky and said 4.5. And then there are other grant opportunities. Meeting with Ben Downing of the Mass Clean Energy this summer. So we're looking at that particular. We also want to make sure that we're speaking with operators as we put out the RFP and the funding starts to go into place. The reason being is, speaking with somebody from the state, he said that if you build it and, we don't know, the county is gonna own or lease the property, we know that much. Are we gonna be the builders of the facility and own the facility and then hire in third-party vendors? That's still sort of the question. It sounds like the county wants to also own the facility. I'm not 100% on that answer. However, if we do that and we build a facility and we put out an RFP and the operators come in and say, wait, we have equipment for a 30-yard garage and you only built a 25-yard garage, right?
Okay.
So we need to be able to speak to our vendors. And it's one of those things that in these projects, sometimes you don't get there. So I like that I have a lot of connectivity with folks because I can find out the little things. I think that could turn into big things if we're not considered. And then, we're just continuing the review. Obviously, it's gonna have to go through permitting and legal for the divestment piece. And then I took some renderings from Greg McCarron of SCS Engineers. He was our contractor using that funds from 11th Hour Racing. And this is part of the final study. So I just took a couple snippets. These are renderings of what that might look like. The base, as well as the county, is requiring and asking that it's a covered area static pile system, which means that it's not open windrows. It would have a receiving building, and then you can see sort of the roadway construction. I think the facility itself would start with about 2 active-ish acres of use with about a 2-acre buffer. And then that can expand because the parcel of land actually goes a little bit more. Again, this is from that, the receiving, there would be a wood chip stockpile. The base is already confirmed, they have plenty of that as they, clear and do things for storm prep and whatnot. There would be a scale for the operators and folks to come over. This is not a public place in the sense that, Bourne residents would drive onto the base and take their little bucket and drop it off the way that you would at a transfer station. This is very different. This would be an operator pickup assessment. And then again, just some more renderings here from SES. This is a system in Maryland that, you can see sort of the rollovers that go in the cupboard. And then underneath are blowers that help with that, sort of cooking and development of the soils. And then I just wanted to say again, thank you to everybody with the support and where we're at, how exciting it is that we've got a template from KP Law that they want to discuss this week. So I'll set that up. And do you have any questions?
Keep us posted.
Go ahead. Thanks, Carrie. Questions? What do you think?
Select board?
Well, I'll say one thing. So our landfill, I swim tons and tons of food waste. They've done a really good job with it, but having a facility on Cape to do the composting, I think would be really beneficial. And I think that you're making great progress. And I think it's really
Be helpful.
good.
Yeah.
I think one of the points that often gets overlooked is in the long run, it saves money.
Right.
All right. At the end of the day, from the taxpayer point of view, we're finding a way to better manage the waste stream to save money.
Got it.
Yes, Melissa.
Yeah, I think for me, I started, composting at home, right? I bought the bin, I'm trying to do the work, but I'm not nearly getting the volume that I really would hope to. And I know that there's like Black Earth compost in certain organizations. So I think maybe putting that out more. So people like me who are just learning, I have a little bucket I keep on the stove and I'm trying, right, to make it better. But maybe a little more, if there were more companies or more of a way, because I would much rather have a company where I could just dump all my waste in a bucket and then have them come and pick it up or put it in my container doesn't smell, but I know that's a big thing. You got to smell it and all the odors. And I know there's more advanced equipment you can purchase. So just, a thought when it comes to, people who are just learning to compost and really wanting to add to that.
Yes.
I see here these times when Phil comes and he sends us emails constantly about all this food waste. And I'm like, well, I'm not contributing to that with my little bucket, right? So if I could do it in a bigger stage, I certainly would. So
Yeah, and there are vendors out there that do this, there's Black Earth and others. The challenge for them, obviously we were just talking about the bridge, right? Is they're coming and picking it up and then they're taking it over the bridge. So, in an environmental standpoint and even a cost standpoint, that's not effective.
Right.
The other thing is they will come and they will start a program. So say the town of Warren wants to look at something like that and choose a vendor.
the vendor needs so many households or businesses to justify coming over here and picking it up. And the more people that participate or the more businesses, it's sort of pricing by volume, the better rates folks get when they have more of a reason. So they're not against doing household pickups and curbside pickup. It's just about the participation rate and the volume. We've offered, and Phil, if you want to speak on this at all, tours of Black Earth and lately with, everything going on and all the projects, work on the bridges and things like that. Every time I try to get sort of a tour together so folks can see how even on a smaller scale, there's a lot of productivity and a lot of turnover of this material. I haven't been able to get enough folks to sort of get there to do it. So I know the summer is very busy, so maybe towards the end of fall, we can get something going, but we're more than welcome to have the select folks and whatnot, or any boards of health and town managers, whomever, if we want to join us on a specific date or have two separate tours where, we can meet here in Bourne and head over to the Wareham facility. We can see Groton. They actually compost beavers there because of the beaver problem. So very interesting stuff. But you learn a lot, especially when you hear from the.
It was a buzzkill, huh?
Yes. Yeah, I think that'd be great, I think you'd find it, I think you'll be surprised at how many people really want to be involved that are really busy with their everyday lives. And it's like, for me, like if I had to bring it to the dump, I'd have to put that in my calendar, right? So having a program where it's picked up or you can get everybody in town to commit, I think we have a lot more people interested. I know I am specifically, so.
So when we do a field trip, you've got some other folks to jump in.
Thank you.
All right, any more questions, comments?
No.
Commissioner Bergstrom.
Just to say that, as I go around and talk to people, they ask me, what Barnstable County does, and I can, tell them, well, we have a sheet here to all the wonderful things we do. But they also ask me, well, what do you plan on doing? What's going forward? And this is the project that I emphasize. Here's another way that we are looking to save the town's money on the tipping fees. I mean, I've been around for a while. I know even when I was a selectman 20 years ago, they were talking about the rise in the tipping fees. They're talking about the closure of facilities off Cape and the more difficulty and more expensive it is to truck this stuff. So a composting facility is right in our bailiwick. It's right something that we can do that directly saves the town money in their operating budget. So
Yeah, and I would say in my district, and I'm gonna leave South Coast out for now, but Cape and Islands, you see tipping fees with 0 ton board. So they have the landfill and they have that right. And on the low end, about 72, 74 a ton, and that does not include transportation or any other types of costs. That's just tipping fee themselves. I've seen it all the way up, and this is mainly the islands, of over 170 per ton. And the cost of tipping the compost, depending on which model is viewed, and it's in the final, feasibility study that was provided by SDS engineers, it's much less. So it's definitely something that would save the cost.
in the future, when I go and I have Cape Cod beer and I have Cape Cod potato chips, I can go into Agway and get Cape Cod compost.
Okay.
I mean, that's
Okay.
the goal and
That's the goal.
It's
Yes.
here, vitalizing types of public spaces,
Yeah.
and town spaces. We're just going into Agway and you can see Cape Cod compost right there.
There you go. All right. Carrie, thank you very, very
Thank
much.
you.
That was outstanding.
Yep, that's a lot of work.
All right. Michael, did you want to introduce our next program?
So our next speaker will be Esther Cattle, who's been with us for 7 or 8 months. Many folks may have been familiar with Esther's 2 predecessors. First was Larry Dapsis, the tick guy. Everybody probably knew
The
Larry.
guy, right?
And Dave Simser. And so what I will say is, I warn all our entomologists that they're going to become Cape Cod famous. So
But they will,
all the notoriety with none of the money. So,
right.
but Escher has an incredible background in insects, and so that would obviously include ticks. And he's working half-time with our horticulturalist and working on some wildfire prevention work. And then Escher is going to be talking to you specifically about tick-borne disease prevention and the new disease profiles that we're seeing with climate change. We're seeing on a steal his thunder.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
And my question is, where'd you get that big bug? that's in this picture.
Oh, I made that.
Did you?
Yeah.
I thought it was something that you might have found out there in the wild. And then we have a,
It's shared here.
security.
I'm
No,
impressed.
I know, I know. And what bug is that?
That is, oh, we'll all see it now.
Yeah,
Next,
perfect.
Ray. As you all have heard, I'm Escher Cattle. I'm the new county entomologist, the new county tick guy. I also work with the horticulture program. As you can see on your sheets, the county cooperative extension does a lot of different services as well as the amazing stuff that it some do. Mainly, my job as extension educator in horticulture and entomology. Half of that is the Master Gardener program. I do a lot of education and training for them. And then in the middle, whatever time I had left for entomology and horticulture programming, but a large portion of what I do is tick-borne disease prevention. And you'll see that Commissioner Lyons was talking about the grub that I'm holding in this picture, this beetle grub that I built it myself, the larger season background. My educational background is in entomology mainly. I got a master's degree from North Carolina State University in entomology and fruit fly phylogenetics. I also got a bachelor's degree in insect ecology and conservation from the University of Delaware, where I mostly did a lot of outreach work as well as a bunch of science communication. You'll see that the breakdown of what I do is in that education and board involvement for Master Gardener, entomology and horticulture. I do a lot of talks and workshops. I'm starting up an insect collection of specimens for Cape Cod's local insects. And I also run insect diagnostics from my office in Yarmouth. My tick-borne disease prevention program mainly focuses on public education, educational materials, and tick surveillance. So since we're here to primarily talk about ticks and tick-borne diseases, let's start with a quick review of 2025. As you may know, we see tick exposure spike annually on Cape Cod in the spring and summer months, and then again into the mid to late fall, with cases of tick-borne disease, emergency department visits peaking in June and July. Last year across Massachusetts, we indeed saw more people visiting the ER because they've been bitten by a tick. But visits for tick-borne disease remained about average for the season with a higher frequency in the fall, when nymphal deer ticks molt into adults and resume the search for hosts to feed. That activity surrounding tick encounters does coincide with what we currently know about seasonality of our local human biting tick species. We're just seeing more of them. This year, the Northeast is at a record high for emergency department visits regarding tick bites since 2011, and we're no exception. Last year, from the end of December to late June, Cape Cod saw 91 emergency department visits for tick bites. This year, in that 6-month period, we're up 65% to 140 visits in that same time. So, week 13 on this line graph here for tick encounter visits in Barnstable County is the first week of April. Over April and May, the number has hung comfortably around 200 to 250 tick exposure visits per 100,000 emergency department visits. And I imagine that number will continue to rise over this time. Keep in mind that the data we have on tick encounters is based only on human visits, and the number of tick encounters in pets and people who remove ticks from home may be higher. While we had an early start to our typical spring jump in tick-borne disease in April, we can still expect our highest number of cases for our top 3 tick-borne diseases to peak in July. Obviously, we won't really be able to see how this curve works out until it's already over and we have that public health data. But May this year saw heavier caseloads of Lyme, babesiosis, and anaplasmosis diagnoses than May of 2025. As tick-borne disease symptoms can begin to present weeks after the initial tick exposure, this means that most of the people getting tick-borne diseases on Cape Cod are likely getting them during May and June. Based on that public health data, as well as the Cape's passive tick-borne surveillance via tick report, our local tick-borne disease frequency profile hasn't changed, at least not so far this year. Lyme is still in the lead in both diagnosed human cases and in tested ticks, followed by babesiosis and then anaplasmosis. That being said, neither of these more passive methods of surveillance can really capture the whole picture. And like every year, we can't say for sure that's a better or worse tick disease here until it's already over. Much current concern is related to alpha-gal syndrome, which works completely differently from our typical tick-borne diseases. I presented with Leah Hamner earlier this year on alpha-gal, but just to quick review. Alpha-gal syndrome is the triggering of an healthy carbohydrates, the lactose alpha-1,3 galactose, via the bite of a tick. Here in the northeastern US, that's mainly the Lone Star tick. Alpha-gal syndrome is not something we can test ticks for. Alpha-gal is a part of the tick saliva and is present at every stage of the Lone Star tick's life cycle. So even a larval Lone Star tick could trigger alpha-gal syndrome. Alpha-gal is in products derived from mammals, and alpha-gal syndrome causes patients to begin to present a delayed allergic reaction to interactions with products like mammalian meat, dairy, gelatin, cosmetics, and other personal care products, and even medications and vaccines in severe cases. In severe cases of hypersensitivity, patients with alpha-gal syndrome may have allergic reactions to mammalian-derived products like wool, leather, lanolin, or even just scent volatiles from mammalian meat cooking nearby. The common food additive carrageenan, derived from algae and not at all related to mammals, can also contain alpha-gal and set off these reactions. One of the things that is complicated about alpha-gal is call it a double delay. And those two delays are the delay from getting a tick bite to beginning to present symptoms, which can be weeks to months. And then another delay of hours for exposures to the allergen and then the reaction to the allergen, which can indeed be completely imperceptible and range up to very severe. Alpha-gal diagnosis is based on multiple different checks, one actually presenting those symptoms, a serological test for immunoglobulins to alpha-gal, and then response to elimination diet. So getting diagnosed with alpha-gal syndrome can also take months to potentially a year. It can be long-term, especially with repeated tick bites causing desensitization of the immune system, and management of symptoms can require antihistamines or, in severe cases, an epidural, as many people present anaphylactic symptoms. One of the kind of hallmarks of alpha-gal syndrome, as we know it so far, is its consistent inconsistency. Case symptoms differ between individuals as well as between exposures, and they do not occur after every exposure or follow an obvious pattern, which is really, really fun when it comes to diagnosis. Up to 60% of people with alpha-gal syndrome do have these anaphylactic reactions. 30 to 40% experience cardiac symptoms that involve blood pressure drops, dizziness, faintness, tachycardia. People can have breathing issues. They can have their extremities swell, as well as their lips or their eyelids. They can have skin itching symptoms, but relatively common is gastrointestinal symptoms, which involve abdominal pain, cramping, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, heartburn, and indigestion. Emerging studies suggest that symptomatic expression may present differently based on sex, but that common symptoms like itchy skin, cramping, and nausea appear independent. Massachusetts, the Department of Health has made alpha-gal syndrome a reportable condition as of beginning of April this year. This means that new and pre-existing cases can be reported to help health agencies track where it's happening most and how it's affecting residents of that area. Less than 5 new suspected cases of alpha-gal syndrome have been reported since the beginning of April. Other cases have been pre-existing, but as I mentioned, diagnosis of alpha-gal syndrome can take weeks to months, even after the patient started exhibiting symptoms. And about 42% of doctors in the United States are unfamiliar with the condition. The potentially enormous lifestyle changes that a patient must undertake to live with the condition often are left to the individuals as well. According to the CDC, alpha-gal is likely the 10th most common allergen in the US at this time. In February, a bill to codify alpha-gal as a major allergen was introduced to the United States House of Representatives. It has not yet been enacted into law, but if agreed upon, would require that products containing alpha-gal be disclosed openly so that those with alpha-gal syndrome could more easily avoid these products. Regulatory support for alpha-gal sufferers would relieve some of that individual burden. making symptom management via allergen avoidance more feasible and less reliant on grassroots databases and participation in support groups. At the same press release in April about making alpha-gal syndrome reportable, Governor Healy introduced expanded hunting season provisions as a means of additional tick population control. White-tailed deer are an important host for most, if not all, of human-biting tick species, and a reduction in host population would help reduce the numbers of ticks that the environment can support. However, these provisions were removed by the State House of Representatives, and citizens in support of the provisions are encouraged to contact their representatives in the state Senate to urge them to add them back. Deer hunting and culling is a divisive issue in integrated tick management. Much like removing understory plants, it's difficult to get the uninitiated on board with the ideas of selectively and actively removing nature from our environment. Making those means of control unfeasible on broader scales that would make a difference. Current research on Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket on root cause tick control and tick-borne disease management will hopefully lend further public legitimacy to broader scale ecological management techniques that will allow them to garner more support and funding. Here in Barnstable County, my work in preventing tick-borne disease stems from education, training, and surveillance. As an extension educator, much of my job is science communication, taking in current knowledge and emerging research on ticks and tick-borne disease in order to advise our community on current best practices. I've gone to multiple conferences and workshops on tick-borne disease ecology and management since starting my position in October of 2025 to learn these best practices and current knowledge. Spend time every week reading papers on research outside the Northeast as well. Another part of my work is surveillance, checking the tick populations in Barnstable County by physically sampling different locations in our towns and noting which species we find. If you see me out there with my tick flag, feel free to say hi. The Cape is a big place and it would be difficult to sample many locations across it alone while completing my other duties. Previously and during the period between my hiring and Larry Dapsus's retirement, the New England Center of Excellence in Vector-Borne Diseases, or NUVEC, sampled each summer on residential properties using interns and graduate students, as well as our AmeriCorps PEP members as a part of Project ITCH, or Is Tick Control Helping, to collect data on different methods of tick control and their effects on local tick populations. As the sampling period of Project ITCH comes to a close, we hope to continue data collection with NUVEC support, as well as from the Northeast Regional Center for Excellence in Vector-Borne Diseases, NEVD. This should materialize in a twofold program with an extended seasonal surveillance with partners from AmeriCorps, using location data from Project ITCH, as well as a larger volunteer staff program inspired by NEVD, Cornell University's New York State Tick List during peak season. These combined efforts will extend the reach of our tick surveillance program, allowing us a clear picture of the seasonal and geospatial distributions of Cape Cod ticks. We'll know exactly where our Lone Star ticks are and when, allowing us to make management suggestions and give advice on how to best work. As for educational materials, we have two things right here for you to look at if you like. The new business card bifold, which is the start of our Make Ticks Take a Hike informational campaign, is now available in English, Portuguese, and Spanish, with the new fiscal year bringing Haitian Creole and French. These bifold cards have information about what to do if you get bitten by a tick, the species and their life stages and seasonality, as well as things you can do to avoid being bitten by ticks, like wearing protective clothing or avoiding tick habitat. As well as how to see a tick on your body, how to feel a tick that's there, as well as how to assemble a tick kit to remove and or prevent ticks from biting. There is also this little plush cat going around. We call him Scooter. He is a simulator for checking a pet for ticks. There are small seed beads planted on his body in different points so that people can really kind of get a literal feel for finding a tick on your pet amidst all that dense. The QR code on the bifold card also leads to the first of several new web pages, mainly involving putting together a tick kit. As of last week, for education, I've given 20 public talks on tick-borne disease and tick safety across Cape Cod, with more scheduled for the fall and into next year. I've also had the opportunity to participate at broader events like the Harwich Health Fair across the region to our audiences. I'm excited to report I've been able to introduce interactive elements to my talks, such as Scooter here, as well as tick flagging and sampling demonstrations. I've gotten to answer questions through these talks and tabling events across all different age groups and equip our community with the knowledge and power to reduce their chances of tick-borne disease. If you don't attend talks or events, may have heard or read about tick safety from my different media appearances this year. There's absolutely an increased interest in tick-borne disease in the populations are soared, and therefore a demand for media coverage on the issues that we're next to this topic. When I'm not sampling, speaking at an event, or creating new materials and programming, I'm at the extension office in Yarmouth, answering inquiries and communicating with the public via phone, visitors, or email. Part of this is insect identification and coordination with the Master Gardener program, but the lion's share of my public communications, as you can see right here, is all about ticks. I identify ticks from photos and physical specimens and send resources and advice about tick bite prevention and provide information about disease testing for tick specimens. Barnstable County most recently had a partnership with MedZoo's Tick Report for subsidized tick testing services from 2021 to 2025 that allowed county residents to submit a tick for basic panel testing for free. And expanded panel testing at reduced cost. The basic panel covered our top 3 most common tick-borne diseases, larger panels testing for newer or rarer pathogens. The program, initially funded by residual grant money through the environment, ran out just before my arrival in October 2020. While Health and Environment found some more funding for the program in early 2026, the staunch public support of the program depleted those funds within a week.
Right.
Currently, tick testing via Tick Report is $60 for the basic panel and $100 or $200 for more comprehensive panels. While there are conflicting opinions on whether tick testing is ultimately helpful for individuals, it's no question that the county residents use the service and came to rely on the subsidized funding. I easily get a call once a week asking about the program's funding status, and I'm hoping to seek further financial support for testing in the near future. In the future as well, more programming materials and services will become available to the public. I hope to soon begin offering office hours where citizens can have their outdoor clothing, shoes, and gear sprayed with permethrin to assist bite prevention. In the new fiscal year, shower cards denoting places to check for ticks on your body will be purchased for distribution from Cooperative Extension and Health and Environment, as well as items like hand mirrors and lint rollers to remind and assist in looking for and removing ticks on one's person. We also plan to expand educational reach further by including print and web media for different targeted audiences in the form of printout educational zines, video tutorials on topics like building a tick kit and tick removal, and interactive web media simulating tick identification and how you can integrate tick smart habits into your daily lifestyle. I am just one public servant and I can't do any of this alone. I work closely with the Department of Health and Environment here in Barnstable County, as well as tick-borne disease prevention staff on Martha's Vineyard. Our program also benefits from the support and expertise of the Regional Centers of Excellence in Vector-borne Disease, as well as the existing staff of local and state extension organizations and entities. Thank you all for your time today. I'm happy to take any questions at this.
That's great. Thank you very, very much.
Very good.
Questions? Yes.
The comment. That just gets me thinking when you're talking about the diseases that are related to ticks. And I have 2 experiences that I was surprised that they may not have been there, and it may fall under Lyme disease. But Bell's palsy, I myself had a tick bite back when I was 5. At that time, it wasn't contributing to Bell's to ticks at that time. They just said you had Bell's palsy.
Right.
Fast forward 15, 20 years later, my husband develops Bell's palsy from a tick bite. That time we were able to identify the timeline at the hospital, and they had stated that there was a lot of research being done related to Bell's palsy under sort of Lyme disease. So I was just surprised not to see that in there because that was a real, it happens.
It does happen. I actually, one of the liaisons that I work with for one of the talks that I do did actually have facial palsy herself for Lyme disease.
Yeah.
She managed to not get a diagnosis until quite late because she kept getting kind of bounced around on what her diagnosis might be. Yeah, it is absolutely a early mid-stage symptom of Lyme disease.
It's very important. I just wanted to stress that because, my husband still has residual effects from his Bell's palsy. Thankfully, mine was relieved 100%, but his was not. His eye and part of his face from that sort of cranial nerve is still damaged. So it's very slight, but you can see it. So it's just a reminder how important this conversation is to check your kids, wear socks, do what you need to, because
I sure wish there was a tick-borne disease that I could say, don't worry about.
Yeah, right. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add that. It's real experience, real story.
So,
Excellent.
if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
So with a symptom like this in an occurrence or the alpha gal
Alpha-gal syndrome.
is there's no treatment or does it last? Like her husband still has a residual. Does it normally go away? I mean, what are the,
There is a chance of alpha-gal syndrome, like your symptoms proceeding over time. If you get repeated tick bites after, you can be resensitized very quickly, and in fact, your symptoms may be worse next time. Alpha-gal syndrome can go away, but it does take a lot of different kinds of management in order to have your symptoms actually go away. I don't know that many stories of successfully having your symptoms vanish,
well,
continuing to not have any kind of reprisal of alpha-gal syndrome.
Commissioner Bergstrom.
Yeah, we talked, it's quite a while back.
Yeah, it was in March, I think.
yeah,
We discussed
You just come up.
the occurrence of these, of the Lone Star tick and the symptoms that go along with this disease as being concentrated more in down this area here, Martha's Vineyard and the this part of the Cape. But we talked about taking, inventory of the cases and seeing whether they were advancing further on to the Capes. It's still the case, it's more concentrated down here in the upper Cape.
There definitely are like the Martha's Vineyard. As far as I was able to get from the health and environment data, only under 5 new cases have been reported since April.
And now the other thing is, I know peripherally of the relationship between the deer population and the tick population, because for a long time we called them deer ticks, that's what they call them. And I also know that there is a movement at the state level to increase the number of days you can hunt. There's a movement to allow you to hunt on Sundays and
Right.
And so, but that's like you said, that's a big issue. I mean, there are people very
Mhm.
divisive and very emotional issue because
I'm
some
not for that.
people like myself, there's a fly in the house, I catch them and I let them out.
Right.
But I just want, but the deer population on its own must have boom and bust cycles like any organism, Has there been a study that would show a direct correlation between the deer population and tick population?
I believe there are a number of papers by Dr. Kirby Stafford that do connect tick populations to deer populations. The titles escape me.
Mhm.
Now, the other question is, do ticks have any natural predators? Is something that goes and eats them?
There are things that eat ticks. Almost anything that does eat ticks eats other things. So they're not dependent on ticks for their general sustenance and the ability to reproduce. The main 2 things that I have read that will eat basically only ticks are a parasitoid wasp and an entomopathogenic fungus. But spiders can eat ticks. Numerous species of ground-dwelling birds can eat ticks. But those ground-dwelling birds can also be hosts to ticks, so it's a complicated relationship.
I'm going to ask another
Go ahead.
question. So I remember the first time Larry identified a Lone Star tick. Was it within the last 8 years or it could have been even 12 years ago and it was at Sandy Neck,
It was in 2015, I believe.
2015? And I don't know if you look at Facebook, but I wanted to go, they go, but I'm a voyeur. I try not to say much, but I did see that someone on the Outer Cape had encountered one. They took a picture of it. And I wanted to grab it and send it to the department, but it went and, I couldn't find it again. But so I do know that they're there.
Yes.
There is, so you're.
Yes, I'm aware. I do get reports across the Cape in various places.
Mhm.
I know they're definitely in Mashpee. I know they're definitely out at Sandy. I know they're definitely, I believe there was a report that I got around Yarmouth.
Yeah, well, this was on the Outer Cape, say around Wellfleet,
Yeah.
Truro area. So which would not, and it's not necessarily, I feel bad for the poor deer because it really is the mice and even the small field animals that can carry this that then
Right. Yeah.
carry it on to. So we're always bumping off these things and not really making a difference. So
Believe Nantucket has a program where they're trying to actually combat the disease reservoir source in mice.
right, there you go. Well, that's interesting.
There you go.
I just have one more question. I have a couple of dogs and they wander around my backyard through the brush and everything. Of course, they come in and so often have ticks. So of course we apply this anti-tick stuff on them, like we got whole thing. Is it possible to, in some ways, to inoculate the deer population? Anybody thought about that? I mean,
Yes, one of the problems with inoculating the deer population at large is you have to catch every deer.
okay.
They get them
Yeah.
to eat something or stick them.
Yeah, there's research ongoing in actually vaccinating the deer population against ticks with the use of a medication that's like oral.
Mhm.
There are numerous little roadblocks in working with animals that are just in the wild. Just
Mhm.
with southern pine beetle, a lot of lands that are not residential are tough to manage because the sheer scale of it is financially very difficult.
Yeah, I didn't think it was practical, but it's just.
I wish we could too.
Well, Larry has a good replacement as far as I'm concerned. So thank you for all of your hard work and your wonderful graphics.
Well done.
No, really well done.
Any more questions from Bourne?
No,
Esther,
great.
thanks.
Keep aware, keep aware.
Yeah, stay aware.
Yeah.
Great.
So, to get any of these bifold cards, you can get them from Cooperative Extension or Health and Environment. We both have.
Okay, excellent. So the other question is we should look at our lab and see what we can do as far as testing. That's another thing
Let's
to,
put that
as a future topic,
Yeah,
please. Okay, make it easier. Thank
All right,
you.
Thanks, Esther. Thanks. All right, we're getting on in time here. I want to ask Melissa and our friends in Bourne, are there any other sort of issues unique to Bourne or things that we should be talking about before we move on to our?
I mean, I think we all know that one of the biggest issues at hand for us is the bridges and
Yeah.
our water, the watershed permit.
Right.
Conversation is, it's new to a lot of us. It's a lot of technical information, as is the bridges.
Right.
So I think those are my biggest concerns as chair right now. A lot of
Well,
other things,
They
but
correlate with our
Yeah.
goals.
and our goals, yeah, go ahead,
Those
Amber, I'll let you.
Those are the two main goals. I mean, we have some smaller goals like replacing a police station roof.
Things like that. Yeah.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But, yeah. Yeah. And we've got some great capital projects going on, especially at our integrated solids waste management site and
Got it.
fire station coming. So, but yeah, those are the biggies.
Well, the reason why I bring it up is as we move on in our agenda, the next items, you're certainly welcome to stay for items 9 and the rest of the agenda, but they're typically our sort of contracting business, internal administrative stuff. So what I'd like to do, unless there's something else that you'd like to talk about, is just take a 5-minute recess, give people a chance to the restrooms. We can obviously talk a little bit more and individually thank folks for participating and
And hosting us and taking your
Yeah.
time today.
Yeah, so we'll motion to adjourn.
Yes.
That's all right. So we have a motion from Mr. Meyer. Do we have a second? A second from MJ. I'll have to do roll call vote since Jean is online. Jean,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
MJ.
Yes.
Yes.
Amber, yes. Melissa, chair says yes.
This was great
Thank
meeting.
you.
thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for
We
hosting
should
us.
actually get.
All right. And
And I would be remiss if I didn't extend
Back on, we're back. Our recess is over and our next item on our agenda is item number 8, new business. I don't have any new business. Do either of my fellow commissioners have any new business to present or bring up?
No, not at this time.
Commissioner Brooks, no. Commissioner Lyons, no. Okay. Let's move on to the next item, which is our consent agenda. And our consent agenda that's before us, we have a number of items, a number of bid awards and contracts, a number of routine appointments. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the Commissioner's consent agenda. I'm going to name several sections here, items A through.
That's Roman numeral 1 to Roman numeral 5.
Yes.
Including,
That's a 6.
so that,
6 is actually.
okay, including all subsections as listed on our June 29th agenda.
That's my motion.
Okay,
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carries unanimously. So that is item number 9. Now we'll move on to item number 10.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the June 10th, 2026 regular meeting minutes.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, it carries unanimously. Okay, commissioner reports. Who would like to report on the Mercy Otis Warren Woman of the Year Award ceremony?
Well, I think both Ron and I attended. It was for Shireen Davis this year, who was a retiring select board person, and many other contributions to the town of Chatham. And well-deserved. Michael did a great job in speaking for the county, and he did note that she went back 13 generations. 13 generations. So if we wanted to do DNA testing, maybe she was related to Mercy Otis. However, that was a good comment. And she is in the vein of that. So I thought she was a very appropriate recipient of that award, and I congratulate her. And then I also attended the PFAS, as did you, and public health meeting. And that was, oh, that's right, I was there. I was trying to think of that, and it was also I was going back to our other meeting with the bridges, but I thought that was, there was something very informative about that, but the PFAS, we had people in to see us at our last meeting, and one of the members of the Hyannis Association that's looking into this had her blood testing with Silent Spring, and she was up way over like 400 people, 400 points. And like maybe the acceptable liver limit is 50.
Mm-hmm.
And a retired nurse from Cape Cod Hospital also had a testing of like 500. And it bothered him, and he didn't like having that number. So he started reaching out to different physicians, and one did prescribe a medication that, as it turns out, this attaches to fatty acids, and fatty acids help us clean out the bad stuff of our body, and they stay. So PFAS attaches to that. So it's identified as in the body as something it should retain. And that's why it keeps accumulating in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And this drug helps break that identification down, and his level went way down, but nobody knows about this. So there was a couple of physicians in the audience, and they were talking about how, doctors don't know about it. They don't know the relationship between this drug. It does need to be brought, this is going to be years before the medical association and insurance companies recognize it as something. But right now they are able to get it through it's a big process to get it at a reduced cost. Otherwise it's like $350 a month or something. But I did propose
Okay.
that they get in touch with our public health department and maybe start to organize some sort of medical symposium or forum for education to doctors and to the community at large. And this is going to take, a year probably to put together and to really get the right people there. But I thought it was a good opportunity for the county to help. I said, one thing we can do is reach out. We're good at reaching out and getting out to the public and convening. We're able to bring a lot of people together. So we could assist in that, and they got excited. So don't be surprised, Michael and Jay, if people start reaching out, and that's where that came from. But it was, I was saying, we've had a lot of presentations on PFAS and what's happening there, but this was, sort of a different conversation, which I found very interesting, and I was glad I attended.
That's right. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bergstrom, do you
Yeah.
have your report?
On the 13th, I attended the 100th anniversary of the old town hall building.
I wish I had been there.
In downtown Hyannis. If you go by there, it's the Kennedy Memorial Center.
Right.
But it was originally the first town hall for the town of Hyannis, when the people there found it inconvenient to travel across Cape to
Barnstable Village. Yeah, it took
Barnstable
long.
Village. So they decided
buggy.
to reach into their pockets and build that very attractive building that sits there now as the Kennedy Center. So it was was an outdoor celebration attended by some of the civic leaders from around Hyannis, and I was privileged to go there. Representative Kip Diggs gave a little speech, and of course the Chamber of Commerce from Hyannis also. So that was a good event. Now I know. I didn't know that was the original town hall. And now I know.
Wendy told me that at the Mercy Otis, and that they were doing that celebration. But in 1985, if you look at our history book of the history of Barnstable County that we found while we were digging out the basement, they had a parade. I said, geez, they knew that there was a county back then. They had a parade from that building to the courthouse.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And John Kerry was there. Andy Card, representing the president, was part of that. If you read the first part of that book, it tells about this celebration. I'm like,
They liked parades back then.
yeah.
Anyway.
And there was much more, well, that was 50 years ago. The difference in 50 years of a lot of things.
All I can say is, even though it's no longer the town hall in Hyannis, it's still a memorial to the Kennedy, to John F. Kennedy and the Kennedy family. So
Right.
those who visit Hyannis, I think it's worth going in there.
Absolutely it is.
Okay.
Absolutely it is. So.
So any other?
No,
updates?
that's the commission
Yeah.
that I have.
Okay. So that ends up with commissioner reports. As Commissioner Lyons said, there was a brief meeting hosted by the Cape and Islands Canal Bridge Group at Cape Cod 5. And Phil Eng was the speaker. And he and I we all had some time with him. And I think it's important to note that he's very interested in spending more time on the Cape, and he's very interested in rail.
Right.
And so my hope is that what I think on the transportation side is we need to be thinking through. So if we have the opportunity to meet with him again, what some of the other issues are. They all seem to me, the most pressing issues all seem to revolve around the canal, the bridges here. I think one thing that I think should be discussed in the context of the MOU with the town of Bourne is alternate transportation services
Absolutely.
to Cape Cod during construction. I don't think that's getting enough attention. For example, are we looking at diverting freight traffic to other areas? Are we looking at taking more use of New Bedford, Fall River as ports to move freight traffic to the islands? Anything that can be done to sort of reduce the pressure and the congestion here, I think will make life easier for Cape residents. So, in any event, I just thought Phil Eng was an engaging person. I know he's an interim, but if he becomes the permanent person, we're definitely going to want to spend more time with him.
If I could just
Yes.
add on to that, I was very impressed with him. I said to myself, well, they actually, it looks like they have someone that knows what he's doing here. So that made me feel better. But he had extensive experience in New York and with bridges and transportation and the transit and was successful. And that's huge. So he just seemed like a very serious, competent guy who wasn't afraid, didn't look at this as something, oh my God, it's overwhelming. He was a guy that you could see could chip through it. So I was encouraged with that, and I'll be more than interested in following his career here, and hopefully it is a permanent one.
I would agree. Upcoming business, Administrator Dutton, our next agenda.
You have a fair amount of end of year votes to take at your next meeting, which is at end of fiscal year. Calendar year and fiscal year. And you will also have a lot of stuff.
Oh, on this here, yeah.
Yeah, just confirming our audit and actually reauthorizing the annual delegation of certain duties to the county administrator. I'm working on revising that a little bit to make it a little clearer. Upcoming, not your next meeting, but
how about the storm after action? You want to give us?
Yep, storm after action as well. So you have a slightly more thorough presentation to give for the storm after action at your next meeting as well. Then after that, you've got your next away meeting in Harwich on July 22nd. If I could go back to the Wednesday, July 8th meeting, that one, since we are not going to see any contractor work until sometime after July 15th, I was going to ask the board if you're interested in making that one in person. We had, by consensus, decided to do a virtual meeting on July 8th, but since we still have access to your meeting room, if you want to do in person.
Sure.
I think as long as we have access to it, I think that would be good.
Okay.
I'm still open to the comedy club as a alternate venue.
Yeah, I like that.
Well,
we could have a few chuckles.
Something to think about.
Then they'll say, "Oh, it's so appropriate. You should just stay there." No, we don't want to be.
No, we have to craft the agenda. So
no, we have to.
Yeah, trust me. Given some of.
All right, I'll start working on my repertoire.
All right.
All right,
I've always.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
At the end of every quarter, of course, now at the end of the fiscal year, I'm always interested in getting a report on revenues in the end of the fiscal year, expenses, and how we did in our budget predictions when we put this budget in place. So.
Well, Carol's going to be, I think that's kind of baked in her DNA.
Yeah.
I think when she's ready to provide that, that's going to be something that we do. Yeah. So I think you can count.
I know
we can count on that.
The town financing, it would have to go up to Boston and come back, and they'd have to certify it and so on. But we can at least get a heads up.
You can, and and I think she'll give you some indication. I think this year is fairly good. We're in fairly good shape. I can tell you that. I can't give you exact numbers, obviously, because it does take a while to get all of the invoices in, get all of our expenses cared for. Also,
I know another community that we'll be talking about going to is going to be Truro. And one of the things that concerns me about Truro is just the water supply issues out there. As much as I want to get a better handle on water supply management issues there, I'm also aware that they're pretty thorny. And I think we might need to do some, through the administrator's office, more reconnaissance in terms of what we might be walking into. When I worked in the town manager's office at Provincetown, I spent a considerable amount of time looking at long-range water supply issues there and the challenges both in Provincetown and in Truro. And the reality is Provincetown and Truro share water from the same lens, the Pamet lens. And that's a lens that has been impacted. And I'm very familiar with the management, some of the problems in terms of sustaining the water quality in that lens. And So I think, I would like to think that we're going to have a water discussion on that meeting date. And
We talking about when we go to Truro?
well, I'm talking about when we go to Truro.
Absolutely.
Because you've got two communities, Provincetown, Truro. There's a lot of development going on. One of the things that concerns me is there a consensus? I know they have a two-town working group on water resources, but what's unclear to me is there's a consensus in terms of what the limitations are on that water supply resource, and have the towns adequately figured out how those resources are shared and how they can be sustained and it's sort of sustained long term. That's the thing that concerns me. But like I said, I've had a lot of experience over the years having to deal with that, both in terms of my work as an assistant town manager and town manager, but also as an aide to both Congressman Studs and Congressman Delahunt. We were always dealing with water supply issues out in that part of the area. So I'm going to be relying on Michael and staff to help us do some reconnaissance there. And I'm also thinking that Commissioner Lyons makes a good point about PFAS and public health education. I think when we are in communities, when we talk about water issues, I think there may be a need for us to have at the meeting folks from our health department that can speak to nitrates, nitrogen, and its effect on public health. And I think we also need to be able to speak to public PFAS. We have to at least have some capability in terms of being able to at least deal with any resident questions or official, because following some of the public meetings in Truro, these questions, there are questions about water supply and its adequacy and whether or not it's sufficient to deal with some of the development activity that's being proposed. And then there are also questions regarding water quality, PFAS and nitrates. And so there are some accepted standards. Now, I watched a presentation from Truro Docs, and these are a group of people with some fairly significant scientific training and background, suggesting that even the current standards that are in place and accepted by DEP and EPA are not sufficiently adequate to protect public health. So my hope is that at the very least, we're up to speed on what those standards are and what the state of knowledge is. Because we may very well find people that have been attending these meetings and forums may have very legitimate questions that center on some of the things that were discussed in some of these meetings and some of these forums. So I wanted to just bring that up.
Yeah, when we go to Truro, I would like to have it's Steve from the commission who works on the water.
No, that's,
No, you know who I mean.
yeah.
He has a Greek last name.
And yeah, I think let us work on making sure that we get a.
Those types of conversations, yeah, definitely.
Well, that's the reason why I flagged it, because I think we're going to want a lot of people there.
A geologist,
With
oh, yeah, we are. And you know, on the Outer Cape, if you start just really worrying about the water and the environment, you know, you get dismissed, and it's not a good thing. Because people, it's not about being NIMBY.
Yeah. Now, before we go much further, talking about agenda items, I did ask Steve Tupper to be on standby to brief us on one small item that we adopted in the consent agenda. And so I'm going to ask my fellow commissioners to indulge me.
Yes, go right ahead.
Bring up Mr. Tupper to talk a little bit about the population estimate business that we approved in the consent agenda. I just want to give some additional clarification. I don't have any problems with it, and I'm glad we approved it, but I think it would be helpful if Steve just can give us a minute or two to kind of explain what's going on. I know it involves the Donahue Institute, Steve, it involves working with the RTA, and it sounds like there's something exciting going on behind the scenes. Maybe you
What
could,
letter are we talking about? That we're
the contract extensions or adjustments involving the Cape Cod Commission and the population estimate work. Susan, so I'm gonna just turn this over to Steve. Can we get Steve up? I see him on the screen. Steve is waving at us. Can you hear us, Steve? Okay?
I can hear you. All good on the
Yeah.
audio?
Oh, and we can hear you too. Yes.
Good.
Great.
So
Thank you,
what-
Mr.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Stephen Tupper, Deputy Director at the Cape Cod Commission. First, thank you for the approval of these contracts and agreements. I'm happy to spend a little time in describing what the effort is intended to do and what we can expect coming out of it. So in short, it's an effort to really dig deeply in the data and analyze our population trends over the course of a calendar year. So we all know that the year-round population is fairly well established. We have a good sense of the number of structures associated with part-time residents, but it gets really technically challenging to start to understand how our population trends over the course of the year, looking at those year-round residents, part-time residents, seasonal visitors, whether they be staying overnight or day trippers. And it's really important in terms of planning decision and specifically planning for infrastructure to get a good sense of those variations over the year, and then also think about what that means as we project out the next few years, next few decades. So the important part here of this contract is to bring on the UMass Donahue Institute, which is really a technical expert in demographics. They do a lot of work for the state in terms of developing their projections, and really we want to be able to bring in as many data sources as possible and use their technical expertise to get a real comprehensive analysis. The hope here being that that could inform planning decisions through a number of entities. That's why you saw a partnership with the Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority and their contribution of funding as well, because they intend to use this analysis to help inform their planning decisions and their investment decisions. And then to be very direct, we want to use this to help anyone who's advocating for funding for the region. Most funding formulas are based on year-round population. We build infrastructure to handle the real influx that we see in the summer seasons. So we want to have a really reliable, robust baseline for anyone who wants to make the case that we need additional investment to serve all of those people that are on Cape Cod.
That's excellent. Thank you, Steve. And just any of my fellow commissioners have any questions for Steve?
I didn't, it went right out of my
No,
head.
just to say that,
I
you know,
can't remember.
it's having discussions about housing and other future development on the Cape. You know, there's a lot of talk about what the future population would be. And, you know, it's all speculative usually and so on. So it's good that the commission is actually doing a study to give us at least some basis to make decisions on that are based on science and not just anecdotal. So that, as usual, the commission is right on top of these things.
So my question for Steve, based on what Commissioner Bergstrom said, are we looking sort of projections out into the next 10 years or so? Is that what we're talking about?
Based on what we have.
That's correct. So it's going to be two phases. First is to look at current day using all the available data to get that estimate over the course of the calendar year. And then the contract does include projections out to 2030 and 2035. And really the intent is to understand the nuances of our region as it differs from the rest of the state. To give a bit of a depth here, when population projections are usually done, you look at some typical indicators, birth, death, and migrations. We're a bit unique in the way that our population fluctuates. So having a better understanding of the way we are today will help give a more reliable estimate of what things are going to do in the next 10 years.
That's great. Commissioner Lyons?
No, if I think of something, if I have it, I'll come back to it.
Yeah, no,
Get in touch with Steve myself.
I very much appreciate the update, Steve. Like I said, I think it makes sense to do this. The additional detail is helpful. And the point that Steve made that needs to be emphasized is that this kind of work can be crucial in terms of securing additional infrastructure dollars, federal dollars, transportation dollars, wastewater dollars, because we have to build to meet that larger demand.
Right.
And seasonality. So
The other thing, if I may, when you're looking at this, not just the populations, but when the commission is looking at these studies, particularly on the Outer Cape, the difference in the geology, which was touched on when we were in Eastham, but also the amount of erosion, because even just this rainstorm that we had last week, I don't know if you saw any pictures on Facebook about Cahoon Hollow. I mean, this is happening. That's not a
What, you think
hurricane.
about erosion?
That's not, that was just rain. And we have to be very mindful about where we're putting people on the Outer Cape.
Yeah.
So I just want that to be in the mindset of any of these
There you go.
reports coming out.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thanks.
Where are we in the agenda?
We're in the future agenda setting. No, I think what I wanted to be able to do is to make sure that Steve had a chance to update on this because it may relate to a future agenda item.
Absolutely.
And Steve answered the question and
And we thank
we
you
don't,
for
we don't,
waiting.
we don't have to address that issue now, but I did want to bring it up before we passed this item on setting our future agenda. So Stephen, unless anybody else has anything else for Stephen, you're excused.
And thank you for being patient
Yeah.
until we got to you.
Yes.
All right,
So-
hopefully you weren't just sitting there.
Anything else, Mr. Dutton, on upcoming business?
That is it.
That's it. Okay. Any other staff reports?
I only have two things. One is that I just want to let the board know that Bridgewater State University and our IT department are working on some basic cybersecurity training
Okay.
opportunities, mostly geared towards police chiefs on the Cape and town administrator, town managers, and assistant town manager, town administrator. So that is going on.
Mhm.
And we're looking for a date in August or September to be able to go up there and use their pretty state-of-the-art facilities. Also, just as a reminder, Superior Court has been moving over the last week out of the Superior Court, and they are spread mostly over in First District and also up in the Harborview Conference Room is now a courtroom. So that is in the works. They will start trials, I believe, a week from today.
Wow.
Mhm.
And it's going to work. They're set, they're content.
Nobody's happy.
Nobody's happy, but it will work.
They've done a great job. The trial court's done a great job, reconfiguring spaces for their needs, and
Mhm.
certainly our facilities department has been very helpful in the system.
Yeah,
Commissioner Bergstrom.
my memory serves me, this was all what happened once. We talked about January.
It seems like it's been going on forever, but we did not pull the trigger until we knew when the contract.
I wanted to grab things, make sure other people.
We want to keep them in the building as long as possible. We want to keep everybody in the building as long as possible.
Well, we can keep doing this tour, and it never,
Well, we might be doing.
That's right. Well, actually, I think we should keep this up. I think it's a good thing. Anyway,
So one item that I have for the county administrator is I am very pleased with the agreements that we signed off on in the consent agenda regarding Children's Cove.
mhm.
Children's Cove, I think, has not only done an incredible job in delivering the services that they provide here in Barnstable County, but also in terms of networking with the island.
Yes.
And it's important to note that they're doing this, but there's money involved. There are dollars that come to help cover that service. So it's not like because there has been this impression out there that somehow we're providing services to the island and that somehow it's Barnstable County dollars. And I think it's safe to say that Stacy and her team at the Children's Cove, they do an outstanding job to make sure that those relationships are properly funded and supported. And I just wanted to give Michael a chance to comment on that because I've been saying privately how impressed I am and how much I appreciate the hard work that has gone into this. And because we've heard from some circles that there's been a little bit of static on some of the great work that they're doing. So can you comment?
I will. Stacy and her team have done a great job on two fronts, well, many fronts, but two in particular. One is securing grant funding from the state. So most of the grants, if not all of the grants that come in, certainly from the state of Massachusetts, are for the Cape and Islands. And that is true with the many of our departments across the county. But in particular, Children's Cove does a great job incorporating the islands. The state gives this money on a regional basis, not particular to Barnstable County. So we have an obligation to spread our services it's in this case to the two islands. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, Stacy has also done a great job securing space in both on Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard, and that space is provided at no cost to us, no cost to the program, no cost to Children's Cove. And what you approved, as well as acceptance of some of the grants today, what you approved were basically 3-year agreements at no cost for the space that Children's Cove uses when staff goes over to the islands to provide the services. So good all around, both on the funding level and also curbing and making it as efficient as possible, rather than expensive, making the program as efficient as possible.
That's great. Thanks, Mike. Any questions at all on any of
Is
that?
there support from the district attorney's office?
Certainly cooperation.
Right, and-
Attorney's office.
And they have the legal and law enforcement follow-up, but no,
I think if you follow, their efforts to try to get funding for a lot of the programs they're trying to do, it's a challenge. So the fact that Children's Cove does get the funding it gets is helpful. In fact, Stacy emailed this morning, I think she's still on vacation, but she emailed this morning to say that another grant through the state has actually gotten increased funding, which offsets a little bit of, more than offsets a little bit of the loss in some of the other grant funding.
great.
That's terrific. That's great. That's good. The only other question I had for Michael is that on our list of regional services, first of all, I'm very pleased that we have this.
I am very pleased
Thank
we
you
have this.
to
Thank
to
you, thank
Velma,
you.
Team Barnstable
I'm
County
gonna make copies
for
of this.
pulling this together.
and hand it out to people.
Yeah, well, Michael also has some extras here too.
Yeah, it's,
But it's important to just, again, emphasize, as we talked about during our meeting here with the Bourne Select Board, that the importance of engaging now a dialogue with our municipal officials and our municipal partners to make sure that there's a common understanding of the things that we're doing. There may be things that we do that they don't take advantage of, right? On the other hand, there are things that we do that they think we need to expand. And I mentioned before procurement. And then obviously today in the discussion about dredging, there was it was a very healthy, productive discussion. Did we put on here the regional housing services?
We did.
We did. Where do we put that?
It's under the county commissioner's office, second item.
Oh, bingo, shared services.
Yep.
Yes, bingo. Okay, well, I'm glad we're doing this and we have this. I think it's very important for our ongoing discussions with the towns. Are there any other administrator or staff reports, Michael?
That is all I have for right now.
Okay,
great.
next item is 14.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye,
Opposed, it carries unanimously.
and it is 12:59.
We are adjourned.